Yeah, let me go ahead and call to order this meeting of the City of Bloomington Plan Commission for September 13th, 2021. I'm going to go ahead and just, since we are still waiting for a couple, give just a little overview of the agenda tonight. We have a rather full agenda. We do have minutes to be approved. We have a resolution on the renaming of Jordan Avenue. We have 3 petitions that will be continued to the October 18th meeting. Those are DP 20-21, petitioner Bledsoe Riggert Cooper James. That's the property at 3111 South Walnut Street, Pike. The other second petition that's being continued is PUD DP 24-21. Robert B. Shaw petitioner, property at North Prow Road, the 3500 block of North Hackberry Street. And then also SP 27-21, Michael Cordaro, Johnson Creamery, property at 335 West 8th Street. All 3 of those petitions are being continued to the October 18th meeting. So if you're here to speak to or listen to those petitions, sorry, we'll have to see you next month. We then also have 4 petitions for consideration tonight. SP 18-21, that's the overlook on 46 LLC, property at 4550 East 3rd Street. SP 19-21, Strasser Construction Co. Inc. is the petitioner, 1300 North Lincoln Street. DP 23-21, Privet Drive LLC. That's 2011 through 2013 South High Street. And finally, SP 26-21, Aspen Topco 2 Acquisitions LLC, the property at 703 West Corley Avenue. So quite a full agenda this evening. Why don't we go ahead and begin by calling the roll.
Okay, Morrell,
Here.
Tate,
Here.
Herrera,
Here.
Kinsey,
Here.
Cochran,
Here.
Sandberg,
Here.
Seaboard,
Here.
St. John,
Here.
and Whistler.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Seaboard, I see that you have your hand raised. Did you have a comment on the agenda that you wanted to make?
Yeah, I was hoping to at least ask you and the commission if we'd be willing to continue one of the petitions on tonight's agenda, SP-18-21, the project out at 4550 East 3rd Street. Just asking to potentially consider this project. It's my understanding that the Indiana Department of Transportation just received a
recording in
traffic
progress
impact study for this project. And that's an important piece of information for them as they consider a potential driveway permit application. And since they maintain that control over a project of this nature, just thought that that would be important information for INDOT and for the city to have and be aware of, as it potentially could impact the site plan. So I just thought that they literally, I think, just received it a few hours ago and thought that if we could continue it to the next meeting, that would just be another piece of information that we could have when reviewing that case.
So it is your opinion that the petitioner would like to see this continued as well?
I do not know that piece of information.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
Brad, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Jackie.
Okay. Sorry. Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. It is unlikely the petitioner would like to see this continued. However, if INDOT doesn't issue this permit, then this site plan will have to be drastically changed potentially because the access derives off of both INDOT controlled roads. So depending on what they determine, we may see a different site plan. So when we found that out today, we were looking through the code and under the general compliance criteria number 2, petitions are required to bring forward any, proof of meeting regulations and standards for any federal or state entities that have jurisdiction over their property. And so we contacted legal to make sure that, access would meet that requirement as well. Just because this is such a large project that we aren't sure what the vehicular impacts will be, we would be more comfortable, the department would be more comfortable having them wait a month. We did not realize that had not gone in until today. So they literally haven't even looked at it, much less given our local staff time to look at it. And it may end up being fine, but in the interest of saving everyone's time and not going through the petition today, and then even we discussed potentially, for example, putting a condition of approval on. But if they don't issue that permit, then you'll have to see a different site plan. It will have to come back different than what it is now. So we would rather defer to Andrew's judgment and just ask you all to continue it so that can be cleared up before that discussion occurs.
Okay.
But the petitioner was we were able to let the petitioner know shortly before end of business. That was roughly when we found out from NDOT. So yeah, we have let them know, but I do believe they are here.
Okay, so yeah, here's what I'd like to do. I see that Bill Beggs is here asking to respond on behalf of the petitioner. I want to be very careful the way we proceed here because I don't want to have a full debate on this, and in fact, just rearranging the agenda tonight. So I'd like to let Bill Beggs make a very brief comment, and then Andrew, if you'd like to make a motion, we can do that. But let's not let this devolve into a full hearing out of order here in the interest of time. So Bill, can you unmute?
I should be unmuted. It won't allow me to start video. The host won't allow me to start video, but I should be unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, I appreciate the consideration of this. We take great issue with a continuance. It's disappointing. We got to the brink of last month's hearing and found out, I think, about less than 24 business hours before the hearing that there was a concern about utilities. And now we found out about 45 minutes before this hearing that there's another issue. It seems to me that the jurisdiction of this question lies exclusively with NDOT. And so what we would ask you to please do is, rather than continue this, assuming you see this petition the same way the staff does, meaning that it complies with the UDO, we would ask that you go forward with the hearing, add as a condition of approval that we would comply with NDOT's requirements, whatever those may be, and that we go forward tonight. That's going to be NDOT's ultimate jurisdiction anyway. And so for those reasons, we'd ask you to please hear the case and not delay this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Andrew, having heard that, would you like to make a motion at this point?
Yeah, I think I would like to go ahead and make a motion to continue SB-18-21 to the October Plan Commission meeting, just to provide the city and NDOT time to review the traffic impact study and better understand how that could impact the site plan to be approved by this board.
Okay, is there a second? Commissioner Kinsey, are you seconding? Okay. We have a motion and a second. I think we probably should just, let's go ahead and call the roll on this motion to continue.
Whistler,
No.
St. John,
No.
Seymour,
Yes.
Sandberg,
No.
Cockrum,
No.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Pereira,
Yes.
Kate,
No.
and Burrell.
No.
All right, so that motion fails, and so we will go ahead and hear that tonight in its normal order on the agenda. Perhaps it would be appropriate for staff to go ahead and start crafting a condition of approval if that's the way forward here tonight that we can consider when we get to that. So let's get back to our agenda. We've got minutes to be approved from the August 9th, 2021 meeting. Are there any comments, corrections, additions to those minutes? Commissioner Kinsey.
Sorry, I appreciate the use of Zoom for good transcription, and I'm glad to see that seems to be of use. However, it does get words mixed up. And I noticed on one of the pages, I can tell you exactly which one, but what should have been UDO was translated into video. And I know for sure we didn't mean video. So if you simply search for video, you'll discover it and then can replace that with UDO. So that was the only thing I noticed that jumped out.
All right, I think we can accept that as a friendly amendment if you'd like to move for adoption with that amendment. I think that would be the best way forward.
Yes, I will motion to approve the minutes with that one correction and perhaps some understanding that there might be a few other strange little quirky wordy things in there that just got wrong, but it looked pretty good. So motion to approve the minutes with that one amendment.
Second.
Okay, any other comments on the minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from the August 9th meeting, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. We will now move on to reports, resolutions, and communications. We do have one resolution that's been submitted here in advance, RS 25-21. This is the Jordan Avenue renaming. And I'm assuming that there is a presentation to go along with this. Jackie, are you presenting?
Scott will be presenting this.
Okay,
Director
yes.
Robinson. Thanks.
All right, we have Planning Director Scott Robinson. Take it away, Scott.
Thanks, Commissioner Whistler. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
I'm actually not going to do a presentation. I'm just going to do a brief overview of the request tonight. Again, the request is to pass Resolution 2521. This will rename Jordan Avenue to Eagleson Avenue. If approved, it will take effect on February 1st, 2022. This will allow time for the notice to follow up with notices to adjacent property owners of the official name change. There's an example of what that notice will look like in the packet. It will also allow time for staff to coordinate with the United States Postal Service and other agencies. It will avoid the holiday season for concerns with packages and other deliveries that might happen over that time if the name change were to take effect before that date. I will also point out the city doesn't charge any fees associated with the name change, but we do recognize there may be some expenses to adjacent property owners if the name change does take place, such as printing new checks or stationery or some other fees that might be associated with that. But again, the city does not charge a fee for changing your address. The staff report details other examples that the city took action to change roads. There were several in the history here, each with different reasons behind that. This name change was triggered largely by the actions of Indiana University and the decision of the IU Board of Trustees on their research on the name of their 7th president, David Starr Jordan, and his teachings associated mostly outside of Indiana University, but they had again, decided to remove the name from several buildings as well as a river on campus. So I think tonight, I think I'd like to really focus more about what this name change represents and how it's to celebrate and acknowledge the significant contributions by the Eagleson family for over 4 generations. Really, that's what this resolution is about, is to acknowledge that significant contribution. It's detailed in the staff report, as well as the justification for why the city is recommending to remove Jordan Avenue from that name. Research has indicated and found that Jordan Avenue was indeed named after Indiana University's 7th president. The Eagleson family has been a significant part of our community for over 4 generations. So I do think that's a pretty exciting thing to acknowledge. So staff is asking Plan Commission to adopt Resolution 2521. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I will say with the task force and vetting, all that's happened behind the scenes about what names qualify, why the justification for the name, addresses of the properties will not change, just the name itself. So all that's been vetted. So again, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners for Director Robinson? No questions? All right. Let's move on then to public comments. If you'd like to make public comment on this resolution, the best way to do that is to click on the reactions button and click on raise hand. If you've raised your virtual hand, then we will try to recognize you in the order that you've raised your hand. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. And if you have trouble finding that button, you can also just try to send a chat message either to myself or to Jackie Scanlon here. We'll make sure to recognize you.
Miss Owen should be able to speak now.
Thank you very much.
Miss Owen, I'm going to go ahead and turn your video off. We don't do video for public comment, just to kind of save bandwidth for everybody, but we can all hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Suzanne Owen. I have lived at 611 South Jordan for 53 years. As an undergraduate, I lived on Jordan Avenue an additional 4 years. I know that the Plan Commission was given the responsibility for street names, thinking that it would most often be designating a new street name in a subdivision or avoiding duplication, not changing the name of a residential street. But you are caught up in a national rush to rename streets. Lakeshore Drive in Chicago and Lee Highway in Virginia are being renamed. Rarely is a street that goes through a residential neighborhood being renamed. That presents a number of complications that I want to call your attention to before you take action. More than 120 years ago, it was named for David Starr Jordan. He had been IU's president, who had the vision to move the campus from 2nd and College to Dunn's Woods, where it could grow. Being a scientist, he also launched it on a path to become a research institution rather than a teacher's college. If it were not for David Starr Jordan, IU might have been landlocked at 2nd and College and a Ball State or Indiana State Teachers College rather than a full-scale research institution. The street's name, Jordan, is a biblical name, but in the present day, it is given both to men and to women, and for African Americans and whites. Often athletic teams have at least one Jordan on their roster. Last Saturday, we saw one of those. People who have made important contributions have also carried the name of Jordan, including Michael Jordan and Barbara Jordan. IU has 44 staff and faculty on the Bloomington campus with the family name of Jordan. Hundreds have given name of Jordan. They are proud to have their own street name. Nowadays, over 3,000 students have Jordan Avenue addresses, 1,000 in Reed Center and close to 2,000 in Greek chapter houses from 3rd to 17th Street. Many streets are named for historical figures like Grant or Lincoln. They simply are thought of as streets years after, unless they are named for a full name like Pete Alice Drive or Mel Curry Road. Indiana, Jordan Avenue lost its front name many years ago. Many residents do not even know the name of the origin because it is so common. Renaming Jordan Avenue has been called an inconvenience to the residents. Let me assert that it is more than that. It will be confusing to the general public who do not read the Herald Times and who are unaware that the Mayor's Task Force has proposed a new name. Many out of both local and out of town people come to the Neil Marshall Center, the Great Hall, the IU Theater, the Hamilton Luger School, and the IU Library, all of which have Jordan Avenue addresses.
Ma'am, you have 30 seconds left. Sorry, Ms. Owen, you have 30 seconds left. Go ahead.
That's 5 minutes, okay. Let me list some of the reasons. Driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, passports, Indiana Department of Revenue, IRS, employers, bank companies, credit card companies, internet providers, video providers, phone company, gas company, electric company, newspapers, magazines, doctors, accountants, mortgage companies, voter registration, all of the county offices, churches, community organizations, service clubs, and direct mail bases. Then we also have the food delivery services like Grubhub and package delivery services like UPS and FedEx.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. That's your time. Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was
Are there any other public comments on Resolution 25-21? I don't see any other hands raised at this point. So just a reminder, if you'd like to make comment here, click on the Reactions tab, click on the Raise Hand button, or click on that Chat tab and send a message to myself or to Jackie. And you will be recognized for 5 minutes. Okay, last call for public comment. Going once, going twice. All right, we are then back to the commission. Are there any additional questions or final comments or a motion on RS 25-21? Commissioner Cochran.
Well, this was kind of a tough when I first heard that there was a name changing, and thank you, Susan, for your comments. I appreciated that. I grew up on Jordan Avenue, and am still very proud to live in a house at 530 South Jordan. Delivered papers in that area, so I know this neighborhood very, very well. Had never really considered the depth of the name. It was just a name. It was a street in a neighborhood which I loved. So when I first heard of this, it bothered me. I was a little challenged with it. I did read the report, and I did read the Board of Trustees comments. So thank you, Beth, for sending those out to everyone. And I mean, you can't deny the reasons and the motives behind their recommendation. I mean, it's pretty tough. I do agree with Susie or Ms. Owens as far as the names themselves. It's Jordan Street to me. It was not, and until I read the book, Ben Lucky on Herman B. Wells, that I really find, read more about who Professor Jordan or President Jordan was at the time. So this has been a tough one for me, actually, because I'd like to not see the name change, to be honest with you. I'd like to keep South Jordan Avenue in there, but again, it's really hard for me to not listen to the recommendations as well. So, I mean, I support the motives behind it. I saw the people that were making those decisions that were on those committees, and I know many of them and respect them to death and understand their motives. I felt it was well researched. As much as I don't like changing the name of Jordan, it's really hard for me not to support it. So I'm still a little unsure, but just wanted to make those comments. But again, thank you, Susie, for your comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Kate.
Thanks. I have a quick question, which is there anything that either the city or the university, I realize only the city is represented here tonight, can do to ease the burden that comes along with some of just the administrative realities of changing your address? I think for some people who have gone very digital, it may be a faster thing than paper these days, but I don't really have a good sense of that. I know that in the materials that we've received, there are prior instances where street names have changed, and that has affected residential as well as business properties. And obviously, the owners have had to go through what Ms. Owen has been describing. And thank you, Ms. Owen, for your comments. But I'm just trying to get a feel for what our best sense of how much can be alleviated from the individuals for having to undergo those changes. That's a question of staff, really.
Yeah, Commissioner Kate, I can attempt to answer that. I think Michael Stewart's here, who's in the engineering department, but I think nowadays it's fairly seamless. Once we start coordinating with the United States Postal Service, internet providers, other folks, Google Maps, there was mention about deliveries, all these things happen pretty seamlessly these days. It's really some of the stuff about changing your checks and notifying your bank. Yes, that's an inconvenience, but typically those things don't cost money. So again, that once the post office makes the change, that coordination happens. So again, I'm not sure if Michael Stewart's here, but again, that's how the process has worked in the past. Oh, there's Mike. Mike, do you want to help answer that question for me?
Yeah, Mike Stewart here, address coordinator with the engineering department for the city of Bloomington. What Scott said is pretty accurate. So we will notify numerous entities, including USPS, dispatch, all of the emergency services, et cetera, all the utilities, et cetera, et cetera. Most private entities such as banks and insurances will pull the list from USPS. So once USPS does update their lists, and once these entities pull that list, everything should be updated. In the meantime, we do provide a letter, which I believe was included in the packet, that will show verification that this is a valid address as of that February 1st, 2022, if it's approved. And that should help for any stop gaps if there are any issues.
Thank you both. Thanks, Scott and Mike, for that. All I'll say is, I've been cognizant of the burden. You know, when something like this happens, it falls somewhat disproportionately on people who are obviously going to be living in the place where the name is changing. I'm with Chris about the compelling sense. I don't want to put words in Chris's mouth, but the compelling reasons given in the report and taken up by staff for this particular name change. It may be that a number of people don't know now that Jordan Avenue is named for David Starr Jordan, but there's no doubt, I think now, and there's been a lot of attention given to what the origin of this name was. And although, like probably most people in the world, David Starr Jordan had some things that he did that were laudable and good, and some things that were bad and wrong. And so, and very difficult to sustain something that's honorific for him. And the choice of, when you just say the choice of the name that the staff is supporting, the Eagleson family, is a terrific choice in my view. I think that it's just a tremendous family to elevate in that way. So I do support this change. Thank you.
Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, thank you. I had one other question for perhaps Mike or Scott. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite read all of the materials in the packet or figure out exactly what would be sent to people who are affected by this change. But I'd like to ask first if there will be, all of this will be clarified in a letter to every resident, every addressee on Jordan, about the actions that the city will take, and then explaining a little bit about kind of what that sets off. I had no idea that the USPS would create that kind of systemic notification. So I certainly don't consider myself in the know on this, but I'm glad to hear that they do that. But I doubt people will know that. And I suspect many people are as worried as Susan Owens is about all of those things. So I wonder if there's a little bit more that can be done to relieve people of that worry, or they're thinking that, oh, I have to get on this right away. Some timeline perhaps could help them understand, when would this go into effect? You don't need to do anything until XYZ date. I wonder if those kind of details could be provided. And then even a checklist perhaps of some things that you know for certain will not be a part of anything like that. You've mentioned a few here, but I wonder if there's a little bit more of a comprehensive list that could be provided to people. So a bit of a question and maybe a bit of a suggestion in that question.
Mike, I'll let you take that, but I would say that we certainly can take suggestions Mike will send out on that notification on that form. Generally what happens is people call and talk to Mike and he'll explain that stuff. But Mike, I'll let you kind of work through the next steps.
Sure. So first I want to clarify that I will send the notice both to people who are living there as well as property owners, since there are rentals. So anybody who has a vested interest in those properties will be notified. As far as outlining exactly what steps to take, I don't necessarily want to deal with certainties in this, because there are a lot of uncertain things. I can say that you don't have to do this with your bank, while some bank may require something. So I don't want to get into too much detail on a checklist. We do list out the entities that we are notifying. And certainly, as Scott said, if there are questions, I am always happy to answer those, through email or phone, which I list those as contacts for us, and I can help guide. But I don't necessarily want to tell somebody that they do or don't have to do something when that may not be a case 100% of the time in that notification letter.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Mike and Scott. I guess one of the things that could help this is at least letting people know when they should be reaching out themselves to their organizations to make that change. And, we don't need to get into those details here, but that would just, I think, might help relieve some of the perhaps unnecessary action on their part. And then also perhaps unnecessary or needless worry about things if it will be taken care of. So I think whatever can be done to just give people some dates, some markers. If it's not changed by this date, you really should be in touch with your bank or whatever the entities are. I think that would be really useful. I also understand that this is exactly who is in this affected area. And it sounds like it's a reasonable number of people who could be assisted by Mike. I don't mean to put your services out there, but it could be reasonable in terms of managing that change. So thank you for whatever you can do in that regard. But I'll just say that, I think that of all the things that happen in this community, this just speaks to me of such a right thing to do. I realize there's burden to residents, but I really hope that they will get behind the fact that this is the right thing to do and to be consistent with what IU has already done on the campus in terms of buildings and waterways and parking structures that have been changed as well. So, I just want to ask people for their belief in the importance that this act has, particularly for students of color and people in our community of color, and how important it is to represent history in this way. And last, I really think that this is, as Scott suggested, a way to celebrate and honor an important member of our community. So I'm really pleased with this outcome of the report and want to support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Sandberg.
Thank you. This body, of course, was not involved in the vetting of this very important decision. And we have, I think all of us have great respect for the members of this community that did serve on the task force, that did their due diligence and their research. And so in many respects, we are signing off on that good work when we vote for this or however we vote this evening. With respect to the individual residents who are going to be inconvenienced and perhaps will have some costs involved in that, I do believe the amount of time that is going to be given you in order to make those adjustments is fair. And again, I agree with Councilor Kinsey with respect to anything the city can do to get out in advance of this to assist with the communications efforts will be, I think, a help. Traditions are hard to change. And I know this has been a long held one here at IU. And with any kind of a change, a name change, we've all experienced them. I know the department that I worked for 16 years, when they changed their name right before I retired, it was hard, but in time, everybody's going to refer to it as the O'Neill School, even though I may still refer to it as SPIA. So in time, people will adjust to the change and will respect the new traditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from commissioners? I have one follow-up question, maybe for Mike or for Scott. Everything is so dependent on the digital records today. Do you know, with Google Maps and Apple Maps, obviously, they'll pick up on any, change in the government record, but do you know how that works? If once the name change is reflected, if someone is still searching for a Jordan Avenue address, because presumably not all the businesses will be able to update their records, will it still reflect the proper address if someone searches for the old name?
I'll again going to defer to Mike, but I will say two things quickly. There are no businesses in this name change, so no businesses are impacted. There will be some sororities and fraternities on the northern end. And then on the Google map, I believe, just from my own personal experience, when we renamed Fountain Drive, it was kind of magic. I hate to say that, but I kind of remember searching Vernal and like automatically switched over to Vernal. And I think really when you're thinking about priorities, you know, the United States Postal Service is one. Emergency services is really the one that we need to be mindful of. And that's the thing that the coordination happens on the back end that's really important. So, you know, that side of the equation, we shouldn't lose sight of that. And that's what will really be important in that coordination with that. But Mike, I don't know if you have any follow-up to Councilmember Whistler's question.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of insight, but while that question was being asked, I searched Range Road, Bloomington, Indiana, which on January 1st, 2020 became Discovery Parkway, and it still pops up when you Google that on the map. So I can say at least for some amount of time, the mapping features do kind of keep with us. As far as all of that is concerned, we do try to work with our ITS department to push those changes through to Google Maps and Apple Maps. We also, just on our end, we try to make the suggestions to Google, so those will update quickly. I will admit there will be a little bit of a lag. There almost always is, so there will be a little bit of a lag before our digital maps pick that up. And as Scott was talking about emergency services, I did verify with dispatch that Jordan Avenue is saved as an alias. If this is approved tonight, it will be saved as an alias moving forward. So if somebody does call into dispatch and, you know, uses the Jordan Avenue address, it will flag immediately as the Eagleson address and bring our first responders to the location.
Great. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Any other questions or comments or a motion on resolution 25-21? I see, let's see, Commissioner St. John, go ahead.
Thanks. I just want to follow up on Commissioner Kinsey's request about and Director Robinson's response to adjust the letter. One thing that came to mind while I was listening is that it might be helpful, although this would be a little work, to attach that letter, maybe a suggested checklist of places people need to reach out to that they could actually use. So for some people, it might be very intuitive and they're good, but I'm thinking about folks who aren't on the internet as much. And even when someone mentioned USPS, not everybody always knows what that means. They think it's UPS. So like being very explicit in respecting and honoring, which I know you all do, all the different users. If there was some maybe checklist attached that said your banks, and just kind of think all the places someone might need to go, that might potentially ease the transition for them. So there's another idea. And then I will say that I do very much support this and recognize the inconvenience it will have for people, which is unfortunate. Having said that, eugenics, not, you know, in what this street name and the honoring was about, this is definitely the right thing to do, in my opinion, and renaming it for someone else who should be honored in this way seems to be a really great idea. And I wholeheartedly support that, knowing, of course, and acknowledging what's been spoken of here tonight. Change is hard. Some of us have very personal change and have even lived on that street. It's difficult, but it's the right thing to do. And honoring someone who was involved in eugenics in the way that Professor Jordan, President Jordan was, does not seem like the right thing to do. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Burrell.
Hi, like Commissioner Corcoran, I have mixed feelings about this resolution. There are several facets that we can talk about, which is none are going to make any difference. I do feel for the residents that will have to take the brunt of this decision. And I understand the hard work that was put behind by the university and also the commission that the task force that was assigned by the mayor or requested by the mayor. And I understand all the reasons why we're doing this. Regardless, I guess my caution, I would just want to leave with the caution that we're changing the name because we discovered something that it's abhorrent about someone. And we are going to honor were thoroughly vetted, and I believe they've done an excellent job. But what if 20 years from now, they do something that we don't agree, or the next people don't agree? So when we honor people, it comes with warts and all. It would be easier to call Elm Heights Road and it would remain the same forever than honor humans because we're fallible. I am not defending in any way, shape, or form the actions of Mr. Jordan, which I didn't know till I received the report. And I'm sure that many of the residents have never heard the full story either. I guess just leaving that with a caution. Yes, I am having a hard time with this one because if you vote no, you represent one way. If you vote yes, you represent the other way. So I do feel trapped. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Herrera.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the task force because we have two names, one name corresponding to the city and the other name corresponding to the segment of the university. We have in the task force more people from the university than the city. And I wonder, Scott or Mike, the rationale or how the names for the city section and the university section were decided in the task force.
There were criteria listed in the packet with the task force listed. I don't have them on the top of my head. I will say there were criteria based on if they were named after people. They had to be deceased for a number of years. There were two sections of Jordan, which I think Jackie is showing on your map right now. There's a portion that's completely under Indiana University's jurisdiction, and this other portion is a shared aspect between the city and Indiana University. So again, with our coordination with Indiana University there, these are the recommendations that we're moving forward with on those names. And then in the packet, the criteria were listed by the task force and vetting those 500 names that they reviewed with that. I just don't know them off the top of my head. Again, that's the body of work that task force compiled during that. Did that answer your question?
Well, the thing is that there are two names, and my question is, how was decided that this is the name for the city portion? Because I am reading the criterion and the different the rubric or the reasons. In selecting the names, there were two at the end, but just kind of curious is knowing. For example, Eagleson could have been the name for the university's section. Both are those were residents in Bloomington. So there was any kind of conversation or discussion about selecting this one for the city and this one just for the university, because they both were citizens in our community, and the background is kind of similar.
Sure. My name, sorry, Jackie Scanlon, again, Development Services Manager. Mike Stewart and I were able to attend the last meeting of the task force before they made the decision. And so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of the decision for the split that they did was that Eagleson is not one person, it's a family of people. So a larger impact on the community and the natural break in Jordan, the existing Jordan Avenue is the break that you saw there on the map that I put up, where the sections don't line up. So the northern portion of Jordan is much smaller than the southern portion. So I believe that had an influence on using Fuller, which is named for Maddie Jacobs Fuller, one woman, for the northern portion, because it was a little bit of a smaller distance, as opposed to Eagleson, which is a large family with a number of prominent people from Bloomington's history, being the larger portion to the south.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Kate.
It's not really a question. I want to respond to Commissioner Burrell's comment and just say that I would not take a vote against this name change or the arguments that were raised by people in the community who are affected by this name change as any indication of endorsement of eugenics or endorsement of those aspects of David Starr Jordan's life that are so highly problematic, to put it mildly. I think there were cogent arguments made in the comments that we received. I can understand why this is a difficult decision. I think both Commissioner Burrell and Commissioner Cochran raised reasons for that, and I think there should be no sense whatsoever, regardless of how people vote on this or how they react to this change, that is reflective of racism. I would not conclude that in any way, and I don't think anyone else should. So I just want to be abundantly clear on that.
Thank you. Commissioner St. John.
Just briefly, completely agree with Commissioner Kate and support.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'd just like to say that I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think there are some very legitimate reasons that you might oppose this. I think generally speaking that naming streets for humans is problematic. As Commissioner Burrell said, we are all flawed, and you could find a reason probably to disagree with any name that's put on a street. None of us are perfect, and we tend not to stand the test of time very well. Certainly, David Starr Jordan is, among the worst, and I think this is an appropriate step. But I do think going forward, and I've thought since the beginning of this process that, replacing one human name with another human name is a risky approach. And I think going forward, we ought to look for. There are plenty of ways that we can make statements and honor people without putting people's names on the streets. And I think going forward, we ought to look for ways to do that because this really could be a never-ending cycle. But I do think in this case, the argument is very compelling, and I think it's important for a statement to be made. And so I'm happy to support this. Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Kinsey.
I'll motion to approve the passage of resolution RS 2521 to rename Jordan Avenue.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we please call the roll on RS 2521?
Okay, Cochran,
Young, yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seymour,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and Burrell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that resolution passes. We are now on to petitions. Our first petition on the agenda is SP 18-21, Overlook on 46 LLC, the property at 4550 East 3rd Street. The request is for site plan review for 175-unit multifamily apartments and a self-storage building also included in the petition. Keegan Gulick is the case manager. Keegan, are you here and ready to present?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Take it away.
Thank you. Just one moment. Okay. So thanks, everyone. This is for the property located at 3rd and 446, 4500 East 3rd Street. I believe is the current address for it. The petitioner is requesting major site plan review for a new 176-unit multifamily development with a separate self-storage facility also included in this petition. The property is currently zoned mixed-use corridor, MC, and located at the southwest corner of East 3rd and 446. The properties to the north and east are also zoned MC. Property to the east and that are east of the State Road 446 are zoned MC. And the properties to the south are zoned residential multifamily and residential high density. And the properties to the west are MC and RH as well. The property fronts along East 3rd Street and also State Road 446 to the south and currently sits vacant. Like I said, the petitioner is requesting major site plan review for 176 unit development along with the self-storage facility. This property was approved for rezoning from planned unit development to NC under ZO 25-20. And a conceptual plan was presented at that time, but the petitioners are now would like to come forward with the proposed development plan by receiving major site plan review. And the existing Century Village property is not a part of this development and will remain. And the site largely sits vacant except for a surface level parking lot on the north end of the property. So any development that contains more than 50 dwelling units does require major site plan review. This site plan contains 176 units, over 198,000 square feet of gross floor area in the multifamily buildings and 117,000 square foot of gross floor area for the self-storage building. Here's just an overview of their site plan. You'll see they have 3 residential buildings here. These buildings are connected by, sort of like hallway type structures. So we are considering this to be one building. Then they have the 2 in the front and then the clubhouse and self-storage facility in the rear. The proposed site plan will have, the clubhouse that I mentioned, the self-service storage facility, 210 parking spaces will be provided with the surface parking lot and some on-street parking located along this private drive here that cuts through the site. There will also be street trees required along 3rd and 446 here. They do show the street trees along 3rd. They will also need street trees along 446 as well, since any section that abuts right away will need the street trees. They'll also be proposing to construct 2 new bus shelters with this petition. One will be located right here in the kind of center of the site. You can see my mouse, and then another one on the south end of the site to serve the Night Ridge apartments just to the south. Currently, Bloomington Transit Route 6, I believe, has to cut through and turn around in the Night Ridge apartments parking lot. So with this petition, they will provide an access easement for Bloomington Transit to use this private drive to turn around instead. And then we can move on. This is just some renderings of the proposed development, not including the storage facility. These are the multifamily buildings in the clubhouse. Just another angle here. This is a rendering of the storage facility, which will be on the southern end of the site. Getting into the site plan overview, this proposal does meet the setbacks, height, and impervious surface coverage requirements for the MC zoning district. For environmental, a tree preservation easement will be created on the southeast portion of the site where the private drive is cutting through. And a copy of the Environmental Commission's memo is included in this packet, which you can review. For bicycle parking facilities, they are required to provide 1 space per 5 bedrooms. So they'll have a total of 47 bicycle parking spaces required with this petition, and a minimum of 6 bicycle parking spaces will be required with the storage facility. Like I mentioned earlier with the landscape plan, they will need to provide street trees along both 3rd and 446. And there are some other revisions I think needed to the landscaping plan, which we will work with them at the grading permit phase, and a condition of approval has been added that a compliant landscape plan must be provided before a grading permit is issued. For access, we could look back at the site plan if we need to, but they will have a drive cutting through the site from 3rd to 446, which is what they'll use for access. They'll be removing the existing drive cut and designing this, private driveway to the neighborhood residential street standards and providing some on-street parking on this. With a site plan, major site plan review does not require right-of-way dedication or construction of roads shown on the transportation plan, but they are building this driveway to transportation plan standards. But future subdivision of this site would require right-of-way to be dedicated and also an additional road to be constructed along the east-west portion of the site. I think that's a Hagen Road extension. And the petitioner is aware of this and has been advised of this, that if the property were to be subdivided, a future road connection would be required. And this is how they've chosen to design the site. And just one final thing is that an egress easement will be required to allow Bloomington Transit to utilize that driveway. For parking, there is not a minimum vehicle parking requirement here because they're not adjacent to R3 or the downtown zoning district. So there's just a maximum, which is 1.25 spaces per bedroom. And so what they would have a maximum allowance of 295 spaces. They're providing 265. 2 new covered bus shelters will be constructed along the driveway to service the residents of this site and Night Ridge to the south. And the final design and location of the bus shelters will have to be approved and coordinated with Bloomington Transit, and a condition of approval has also been added for that. For the architecture of the buildings, the residential buildings will have a mix of brick, cast stone, fiber cement siding. They incorporated some elevation changes, regular pattern of glass on the first floor, and changes to the facade height to comply with the requirements of the UDO. The flat roof parapets on the supporting walls do meet the roof design requirements. And the storage building will be finished with a mix of brick, solid color EIFS, and limestone banding. The exterior facade shows the same design pattern around the entire building to meet the 360-degree architecture requirement, and incorporates elevation projections, changes in facade height, and awnings to meet the design requirements. So in conclusion, we do find that this petition is compliant with the UDO standards. We did want to add, based on our conversation earlier, that, if you all would like to add a condition related to meeting NDOT's requirements, I believe we have drafted a condition that could be added. But other than that, this proposal is in line with the goals of the comprehensive plan in the urban corridor district. We'll create 176 dwelling units near other high density uses and amenities, and will be serviced by Bloomington Transit and provide improved transit facilities. So we are recommending that the Planning Commission adopts the proposed findings and approves SP 18-21 with the following conditions. 1, that any future subdivision of the property will require the site to be brought into compliance with a transportation plan. 2, that the petitioner will provide the required number of bicycle parking spaces on the site prior to the issuance of a grading permit. 3, that a landscape plan that meets all UDO requirements, including street trees, must be submitted and approved prior to issuance of a grading permit. 4, that the petitioner will work with Bloomington Transit on final design and location of the on-site transit facilities to be determined before a grading permit is issued. And 5, that the petitioner will record an access easement for Bloomington Transit before final occupancy is issued. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keegan. Did you have that additional condition of approval ready to share, or should we come back to that?
Maybe I can read it out, but maybe Jackie, I don't know if you had any final things to add to it, if it was good to go.
I think that was good to go. Yeah, our suggestion, let's see, would be per general criteria condition 2, the petitioner shall comply with NDOT regulations or requirements that result from the traffic study and driveway application submitted for this petition. So, they will have to meet that requirement. It's in the code, but just to be clear that we are still waiting on that data, we would suggest adding that.
And you would add that as
condition
number
6, correct.
And just a quick clarification on that, Jackie, if for some reason compliance with that NDOT requirement caused some dramatic change in the site plan, would this just come back as a they have to resubmit and come back as a separate petition?
Yes, I believe so. So that's part of the suggestion about continuing, is that if they get this petition approved tonight with conditions, then it's approved and it's done. If they can't meet the conditions, then they'll have to file again if they would like to do another petition.
Right.
Mr. Worker can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that's the case.
All right, thank you.
No, just to confirm, that is correct, what Jackie said. So,
thanks, Mike. Any questions from commissioners? Well, excuse me, before we get to that, is there a representative of the petitioner who'd like to add anything to the presentation?
I believe I saw some of them present, but I'm not sure who would be speaking.
Let's see, let's unmute Bill and see what it says.
Thank you very much. Members of the Plan Commission, thanks for hearing our case tonight. Thank you for your review and careful consideration of the petition. We agree with the planning staff's recommendations. And by the way, I want to say a particular thank you to Keegan Gulick. He's been easy to work with. We've appreciated his thoroughness and we've appreciated the manner in which he's approached this. So I think Keegan deserves a recognition. So I want to make sure I say that. But with respect to the planning staff's recommendations, we agree with the conditions. Frankly, I couldn't write fast enough to catch that 6th one. So I hope I hope the plan commissioners have that 6th one, but essentially I think it said we got to comply with NDOT's requirements, and that is certainly our intention and our understanding and our acceptance as well. With me tonight on behalf of this petition, Hiran Patel, Sanjay Patel, and Neil Patel are here on behalf of the petitioners. Josh Riders is here from American Structure Point. Mike Johnson is here from Studio M Architecture. Jerry Hoffman is here from US Architecture. So in there I see number 6 has been added to the screen, shared to the screen. And we are accepting of proposed finding numbers, condition number 6 as well. So with that, we appreciate your consideration, and we will I'll yield to the comments by the Plan Commission.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Keegan, and the petitioner. The question I have is related to the NDOT new piece of information. And of course, Commissioner Seaborg already indicated some interest in allowing staff more time to consider this request. And I see the proposal, or the proposed condition, which seems good, specifies both the traffic study and the driveway impact. driveway application. Yeah, that's the word. Can somebody talk a little bit about what that entails or what new information we might gain? I do remember when we talked about changing this over, its designation from a PUD, there was concern then about traffic in this area. So I would like to hear of any concerns that staff have about traffic study and what the driveway application might indicate or suggest.
Sure. So I can try to, I think, answer that. My understanding is that, NDOT has to approve their driveway cut onto, I think, Third, which is also, I think, state road. So I think the concern is that if there was something that came out of the NDOT's findings that, it would cause them to have to redesign the site based off of, what NDOT says. And so, I think our intent is to try to avoid that. But, it is, one of the criteria in the UDO that they have to meet other applicable regulations. So, I think the thinking was that if they're not meeting that, then they're not, if they're not meeting NDOT's regulations, then they're not meeting the criteria in the code. I don't know if Jackie has anything they'd like, to add to that.
Yeah, I would just say, it is required by code anyway. The actual traffic study, in a site plan, we don't always necessarily compel a traffic study, but they are doing a traffic study here because of working with NDOT. So we would like to see those results. I don't necessarily know that we have an idea of what we think we'll see. Traffic engineer, Mr. Seaborn, may be able to speak to that more. I just think we want to make sure that NDOT and engineering staff are comfortable with the results of what's shown. You have seen a traffic study here before with a previous development and showed, that the traffic would be able to be split. Obviously, most traffic would be going west on Third. We worked with that developer at the time. I believe ended up doing a right out only, potentially. That was discussed. There are just certain types of manipulations to the entrance that may be required by NDOT that we have seen come up in previous discussions for this particular site. So we would just like to make sure that it's understood that those things will have to be included if NDOT has a concern about safety here. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it sort of does. I appreciate I understand the need to make sure that engineering and city has time to consider this, and the petitioner too has time to consider if it's going to cause a major disruption to what they've planned. They deserve time to think about it too. But I just wonder if there is a concern particularly around the traffic study already that we ought to know about. Where is both the petitioner and the staff on the traffic in this area? Is it the intent just to rely on the NDOT traffic study that's already going to happen? Or was that not part of the original discussion?
Yes, I believe that. So the NDOT traffic study will be based on the projected use of this particular site with this number of units. So we haven't seen a study yet that has that. One thing that we have found useful in the past, or one thing that we will do when we look at it, is ask engineering staff to look and see if they agree with the amount of with the numbers being put out. So, not that we would question the engineers, hired by the petitioners, but that we have to, we know the area may be better than others and have to be able to agree that we think this type of use here, based on what we know about generation at other similar locations, will be what they're showing, and then what the effects are on the surrounding roads. For example, this area was thought about quite a bit in the transportation plan, and there are road connections that are in the transportation plan. We've talked to the petitioner ad nauseum about them. They are not interested in making the road connections, and they don't have to. We can't compel them to in a site plan. That's why it's discussed. That's why Keegan discussed it, and why it's included in the conditions. Because if they ever go to subdivide this property, they will have to put those roads in. So they are now choosing to build in a way that if they go to subdivide in the future, they will have to tear buildings down and move dirt and they are making that choice now. We think as a community that those road connections could help diversion of cars so that they're not all pouring out onto 3rd Street. Again, they're not interested in doing that right now, and we can't compel them to. So we want to draw that to your attention to say, hey, in 5 years, when they come back and ask for a subdivision and say, oh, we need a waiver from the road connections, we don't want to do that because we have told them up front, it's vacant, you can build to meet these requirements. So it is kind of, we are in an odd position because we do think that those road connections, for example, would mitigate some of the traffic concerns that we hear from the community about, a large project going onto this site and everyone using, the majority of the people using the 3rd Street exit. But the petitioner is not interested in doing that. So we will, along with engineering staff, look and see, does it seem that this driveway can be put in a safe manner without additional changes to 3rd Street, for example, in the right of way being done. And that's something that the engineering staff and NDOT will have to discuss. If there are items that need to be upgraded in the roadway, for example, that the petitioner will then be responsible for, then that's what will happen. And we'll try to make it as safe as possible.
Thank you for that elaboration. I have a feeling that there's a lot more going on here and can anticipate public comment around this about traffic concerns. And I wonder, I might hold back on additional questions right now, but to me, it seems appropriate to have the petitioner at some point respond to the driveway.
Sure. They said they're willing to if you have questions. I don't know if now is the time or not. But.
Yeah, we may as well. I think the driveway, yeah.
Okay, great. Mr. Rogers, you can go ahead.
Listening in, was there a specific question or would you like me to discuss generally the approach on the traffic study?
I think if you could talk a little bit about the approach to the traffic study and then the driveway cut and, anything that you've determined about safety would be useful.
Let me first preface that I am Josh Rogers with American Structure Point. We did not perform the traffic impact study. That was by traffic engineering, with who I believe they do a lot of work in here. I'm sure I'm familiar with Brad Moreland and a number of other items, folks over there. The intent of the traffic study, we met with NDOT about 2.5-3 months ago to kind of kick off the first meeting and discuss the minutes and kind of discuss the existing traffic conditions and what the, I guess, fundamental assumptions of the study would be. Traffic engineering prepared that, sent that to NDOT, and they approved that. And so then the study commenced from those assumptions. I don't want to speak too much detail because I wasn't really involved in that other than a coordination aspect. So I don't want to misspeak on anything. From that, they gathered data over the course of a few weeks during peak AM and peak PM hours. And from there, they prepared models and we sent out the actual study, I believe this morning, to NDOT based on those assumptions that they made and based on the approved volumes that NDOT gave them. And those volumes were current existing volumes, the post-construction volume in the short term, and then a post-construction volume. And I believe 2026 was a forecasting, and then maybe 2036 as well. So I think they looked at this to about 10 years and maybe even 30 years as well. 2041, they looked at this to 2041. I'm looking at this right now. So there was definitely some consideration on the current traffic conditions once this development is complete, and traffic conditions 30 years from now in a completely different, fully developed city. So there was a number of just scenarios on how everything would fit together. And there were some recommendations in that, but again, I wasn't in the preparation of that study, so I can't really answer too specific a questions to that right now. That's kind of the background. That's the way this study was performed and the report was generated.
Thank you. Commissioner Kinsey, does that answer your question?
Well, I don't know if there's further comment about the driveway cut there and safety concerns. Is there, the presentation today didn't talk much about that other than it's going to be there in the existing cut.
Are you referring to the realignment with Morningside Drive and the new cut on State Road 446?
No, actually, I think it's the cut that is on the existing 3rd Street. Is that correct?
The realignment with Morningside Drive?
Kendall, can you, or Keegan, can
Yes.
you help me with that?
Yeah, that's right. So there, yeah, go ahead and share that, Keegan. So there's an existing driveway. They're moving it so that it will be directly south of the existing Morningside cut to the north. So they're moving it slightly west.
Okay. Yeah, if there can be, if there's any information about that, safety issues, any concerns related to that, that would be good to know.
Yeah, I think the traffic study that was sent out today definitely spoke a lot to that connection. Again, I was not the engineer that prepared this, so I don't want to speak in detail on this, but a general summary of that particular connection with the realignment with Morningside Drive was that provide full. The study wanted to see full access movements at that location to allow left and right turns and through movements to take full advantage of that realignment. And then with the recent improvements in 3rd Street, they didn't feel confident that channelization of traffic was possible without significant improvements in 3rd Street, such as paved medians or really paved medians and channelization of that nature. That's my understanding of what this study found.
Is there anything else from staff? Thank you for that. Thanks.
No, I don't believe so. What we heard in previous petitions, a different set of engineers, different petitioner, was that, and I believe in Mr. Seaborg, can correct me if I'm wrong, that in those instances, staff did agree with those engineers that aligning this entrance with Morningside was beneficial and would be an improvement for safety here, was something that we were looking for with any development of this site.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thanks.
All right, any additional questions? Commissioner Sandberg.
Thank you. This question is not specific to this particular site plan review, but it is about the NDOT study in its totality. We just got an email on the city council today from a constituent who was really concerned about the traffic signaling and the difficulties in making turns on College Mall on 3rd Street, which again is controlled by NDOT and not the city of Bloomington. And so my question has to do with how comprehensive is this NDOT study going to be throughout the entire corridor of 3rd Street? As Plan Commission knows, we have a lot of things popping up here that are going to impact traffic. And if we're already getting constituent concerns about things related to traffic, again, I am concerned. So does staff have any input about what this report is going to mean for the entire 3rd Street corridor with the intersections that NDOT controls?
Sure, I don't think so. We haven't seen it. So it's just part of why we wanted to push it off. But based on what we've seen in the past, I think it will be pretty tight to this new street cut intersection and the immediate areas of the highway around it. Sorry, I don't know more.
Right. It's just, it is problematic as we look to all the development that's going along. And I am certain that if we have to make improvements, we really need to be planning ahead for that. So thank you.
I can speak on what the scope of the report that was prepared was on. I can't speak on behalf of NDOT on what they may or may not require. the scope of the study that was sent to today extends as far west as South Park Ridge Road and extends to the northeast intersection of 3rd Street and State Road 446 and extends to the south, just south of the site to the Knights Ridge entrance.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner Seabour.
Thanks. I'll maybe transition to a couple other topics, still transportation related, but I think the staff presentation did a good job or highlighting some of the city transportation plan connections. Just so everybody's aware, the transportation plan appears to show a new north-south road, essentially continuing Morningside to the south through this site all the way down to Janet, I believe is the name of the street. This project is currently designed. I don't think it would allow that connection. Then again, the east-west connection through this property as well. And I guess my question is to the petitioner or the team, just to understand, was making those connections considered? I have to imagine they were, but just to kind of walk us through that process and why not make those connections, I guess. I just want to understand that.
Is there someone from the petitioner team
this
would like to respond?
This is Bill Beggs. I hope you can hear me. This is Bill Beggs. Thank you for unmuting me. That was considered at great length, and there was a great deal of conversation about that. I'd start with the transportation plan itself. The map that to which I think you refer does indeed show that east-west line. The text, however, does not. The text only shows connectivity down to Janet Drive, as you say, which would imply knocking down Knight Ridge Apartments, knocking down, I think, some houses in order to get to Janet Drive. So at least Knight Ridge for certain. So that was one consideration. With respect to the east-west, I think is also part of your question. We paid a great deal of attention to that. We consulted with the neighbors. We received strong feedback from the neighbors. Rather than the west connection it's called Montauk Point, rather than that being a street, in fact, that's a parking lot. And it's not a straight through parking lot, but instead it's essentially a fork if you're coming from the east and going to the west. It also is home to medical services. It's also home to services for disabled children. And so we got a very strong feedback and pushback to the safety that would have been compromised by sending traffic through a parking lot as opposed to a through street.
And maybe just to clarify for public or just people watch, like the city transportation plan is a long range plan that thinks about what the system could look like 100 years down the road. So recognizing that, in the near term, there might be some apartments to the south or a business to another way. We've got other petitions on this same night's agenda where existing developments are proposed to be cleared and starting from scratch. So I'm just trying to keep that long-term vision. So I guess that was more a comment than a question. I guess another more detailed question is, I think a part of the project includes some great amenities to transit, and it sounds like potentially helping out some transit. But just as I reviewed the site plan, I struggled to see how residents of the Knight Ridge Apartments will access the new bus stop. I just didn't see that, and I'm curious. I know accessibility and ADA is a really important thing for transit, and just want to make sure we're not missing something that we should be considering.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm not sure if you can pull a site plan up, Keegan, but in the southeast corner where we have that new kiosk proposed for the Knights Ridge development, we're showing the concrete pad and loading area for staging area for the bus. It's actually a little bit further east now, Keegan. And there's a connection, there's a sidewalk connection shown to Knights Ridge, Knight Ridge's existing asphalt drive, asphalt path that they have along the south. I think the intent there is that it's difficult to show proposed construction on property that's not within the scope of your project. And we were, with the intent of that little north-south sidewalk stub, was that would be the pedestrian connection for Knights Ridge, and they would use their parking lot as they currently do to get to the new bus stop.
Okay, so do you know if Knight Ridge or BT, and this might be something that just needs to be coordinated, but I imagine there, it looks like, at least in an aerial, that Knight Ridge has a large grass strip between their drive aisle and the property line. And I know you're really looking at your property, but it's an important issue that I want to make sure we are really.
I would imagine that it's going to require further coordination between us, Knight Ridge, and Bloomington Public Transportation to address that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are my questions for right now.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? All right, seeing none, we will go to public comment. If you'd like to make public comment, click on the reactions button and the raise hand tab, and we will recognize you to the best of our ability in the order that your hand was raised, and you'll be given 5 minutes to make comment. If you have any trouble finding that raise hand button, feel free to send a chat message to myself or to Jackie. We'll try to recognize you that way as well. Any public comment on SP 18-21? I'm not seeing anything. Jackie, am I missing anything?
I don't see any, and I don't have any messages.
Final call for public comment. Okay, seeing none, and we are back to the commission for any comment, additional questions, or a motion on SP 18-21. All right, can I get a motion? Commissioner Kinsey, go ahead.
You're muted.
Not responding to my click now. A motion to approve or move forward the site plan review for the 175 unit multifamily apartment at 4550 East 3rd Street, SP 18-21, with the 6 conditions as specified, partly in our packet and new condition 6 on the screen.
Second.
And that's a motion to approve. This
Approve,
is the
yes,
final.
sorry. Yep.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, just to clarify, Commissioner Kinsey, your motion is to adopt the proposed findings and approve SP 18-21 with those 6 conditions, correct?
Yes.
Yes, all right. And your second stands, Commissioner Sandberg?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Let's call the roll on the motion.
Okay. Kate,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
and Seaboard.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. The motion is approved. We will move on to the next case on our agenda, which is SP 1921. Petitioner Strausser Construction Company. Property is at 1300 North Lincoln Street. And this is a request for major site plan review. And Keegan, are you presenting this one as well?
Yes, I am.
All right, take it away.
Just one moment. All right. So, as you said, this is for the property located at 1300 North Lincoln on the corner of 17th and Lincoln there. The petitioner is requesting major site plan review for a new 16-unit multifamily dwelling in the mixed-use student housing zoning district. The property is located on the northeast corner of the intersection of 17th and Lincoln. Property is currently zoned mixed-use student housing. All of the surrounding properties are also zoned mixed-use student housing. Currently on the site is a single-family structure and a 6-unit multifamily structure. And the petitioner is proposing to demolish the existing structures and construct a 16-unit multifamily dwelling that does contain more than 15,000 square feet, which is what triggers it to be reviewed by the Plan Commission today. This development contains approximately 18,000 square feet, so just over the threshold to be reviewed by the Plan Commission. Sorry that this is a kind of a blurry image, but this is an overview of their site plan. The proposed site plan is a 4-story structure, the mix of studio and 2-bedroom apartments for a total of 24 bedrooms. Within the parking garage, which is located beneath the structure, they'll have 11 I believe, parking spaces. The property will be accessed by a driveway cut on Lincoln Street, and the development will extend the 10-foot multi-use path that started at the adjacent Evolve development to the intersection of 17th and Lincoln. And they'll also construct a 6-foot sidewalk along Lincoln Street as well. And street trees will be provided along both of those frontages there. Here's just a rendering of the site. Here, you can see their parking access is along Lincoln there. It's sort of like a basement level garage. And their pedestrian entrance is on this side here. And that will also, in their site plan, is an internal bicycle parking storage in the parking garage area. So to get into the site plan issues, the proposed site plan does meet the proposed setbacks, height, and impervious surface coverage for the MS zoning district. One thing just to add with this is that the UDO allows for sidewalks, trails, and paths located on private property in a pedestrian easement to not count towards the maximum impervious surface coverage or against the minimum landscape area for the property. So in the EC memo, they do address the impervious surface coverage. And so we just wanted to clarify that it does meet the requirements. That their initial plan didn't account for this change where the path would not count towards the impervious surface coverage. So they do have a total of 67.3% impervious surface coverage and 32.7% landscaped area, which does meet the impervious surface requirements. There are no environmental constraints or environmental features on this site. A copy of the EC's memo is attached with this email or with this report. And like I mentioned above, was just incorrect on the impervious surface coverage requirements. The residential uses in the MS zone district are required to have 10% of the provided vehicle parking spaces or one space per 5 bedrooms for bicycle parking. So they'll have a minimum of 6 bicycle parking spaces required here. The petitioner will also extend the 10-foot multi-use path along 17th Street to Lincoln Street and a 6-foot sidewalk from Lincoln to the north. Per the UDO, the portions of the multi-use path and the pedestrian easement do not count towards impervious surface coverage or against the landscape requirements. A minimum of 1 canopy tree shall be planted per 40 feet along the property line. A compliant landscape plan will need to be submitted prior to the issuance of a grading permit, and a condition of approval has been added. For access, they will have a drive cut along Lincoln and be removing the existing drive cuts along 17th Street. They'll have 11 vehicle parking spaces in the basement level parking garage. There is not a minimum vehicle parking requirement here. The maximum is 1.25 spaces per bedroom, which would allow them for 20 spaces. They're proposing 11. And although this parking is located in the building, it sticks out below the north building wall, and therefore is required to meet the setbacks, the side parking setback of 8 feet. They do not have enough space to meet that 8-foot requirement and are proposing a 5-foot side parking setback, which they are applying for, or they have applied for a variance to allow for that 5-foot side parking setback. So a condition of approval has been added to make this approval contingent upon receipt of the variance from the BZA. As far as architecture, the building we finished with a mix of stone, brick veneer, fiber cement, siding, metal railings, and awnings. The exterior facade of the building incorporates elevation projections, a regular pattern of glass, and changes the facade height to comply with the pattern requirements in the UDO. And a primary pedestrian entrance is located at the southeast corner of the building. It incorporates a large awning, building setback, and large amounts of glass, and a clear building address to meet the UDO requirements. So based on that, we find that this petition is compliant with the standards of the UDO, except for the side parking setback, which they are requesting a variance from to allow for a 5-foot side parking setback. This petition will add 16 dwelling units to an area with high demand for student-oriented housing and housing options. So with that, we are recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the proposed findings and approve SP-19-21. Sorry for the typo in that right there. Based on the following conditions: 1, that any future this is the wrong conditions. I have them right here. 1, that approval is contingent on the petitioner receiving appropriate development standards variance to allow for a 5-foot side parking setback as shown in the northern side of the building. The petitioner will provide required number of bicycle parking spaces on the site plan prior to issuance of a grading permit. And 3, that a landscape plan that meets all UDO requirements, including required street trees, must be submitted and approved prior to issuance of a grading permit. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keegan. Is there a representative of the petitioner who'd like to add anything to the presentation? Keegan, while we're waiting.
I think Kendall with Smith Design is going to kind of start our comments for the group.
Yeah, thanks,
really
Ryan.
Quickly, hey, sorry. Keegan, can you just quickly verify for me that the recommendation and conditions that are in the packet were correct?
Is that a question for the petitioner?
Sorry, I can verify that. It is correct in the packet.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
No problem. This is Kendall Kanoki with Smith Design Group, and I am the civil engineer on the project, and I'm here with Matt Ellenwood, who's the architect, and also Ryan Strouser, who represents the owner. And I think Keegan really demonstrated everything very clearly in his presentation. I did want to clarify the request for the variance. I don't think I can share my screen right now.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can give me access to? Okay.
Okay, you should be able to, Kendall.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so just real quick here, it's a pretty tight site. So our building is effectively at the front building setback, which is 15 feet. And then we have inside the garage a 20-foot 4-inch drive aisle, and then we have an 18-foot parking stall. And so that's the portion of the parking that sticks out from the building, which is regulated different than parking that's inside the building. And so as you can see here, the parking sticks out and it encroaches into the 8-foot side yard parking setbacks slightly. And, you know, just looking at this and everything, we could go down to the minimum 16-foot parking stall with a 20-foot drive aisle. But inside a garage, that is just very, very tight. That is kind of the absolute minimum. And so just looking at this, and even if we did that, we would not be meeting the 8-foot parking setbacks. So we felt it was necessary, if we did parking on the site at all, to request the variance here. So I just wanted to kind of show that, to clarify here. You know, we still have room for the landscaping buffer yard and the retaining wall, but we're just kind of asking to encroach into that setback about 3 feet just to make the parking work. This was also a new requirement that started in the 2021 UDO. So when we actually started this, there were no side yard parking setbacks. So that was kind of something that we had to wrestle with, you know, when that change came to us. So just wanted to clarify that. And I think Matt has a few comments on the architecture as well.
Yeah, thanks, Kendall. Matt Ellen with Matt Black Architecture. I don't know if we've got, if we can pull up the exterior quickly. Yeah, that's fine. Address briefly some of the work that we did on the exterior to address sort of the parking garage in the lower level. You can see in the bottom left of this south elevation that we've incorporated some retaining walls and landscaping to kind of help buffer that edge of blank wall along the main street there. We feel that addresses some of the concerns of the parking in the lower level. And then that also offsets some of the loss of landscaping from the north side of the property where we're encroaching on that setback. And we believe that this will be a better, you know, side of the building for landscaping anyways. It's south facing, it's public on the public way. So I feel like we've done a good job addressing that. And then speaking to the environmental commission's report, they had asked about green building features. You'll see the awnings and balconies on the south side of the building. That's both just to provide exterior space for the tenants, but also to help provide some shading to the amount of glass on that side of the building. We'll use high insulation values, a low, high reflectance roof on the top of the building. It's a pretty compact footprint, as you can see. We have an exterior balcony on the north of the building for access to the stair towers, so that limits the amount of additional mechanical and lighting that's needed to heat and cool corridors. So we feel like this is a pretty compact, pretty urban design that meets all the other requirements of the UDO.
That's it for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners for staff or for the petitioner? Not seeing any.
Can I make one clarification on those conditions? Please. I think we would suggest to the Plan Commission to alter the first condition so that it would say a maximum of 5 feet. In the event that the Board of Zoning Appeals does find it appropriate to have those parking stalls be 16 feet. I think there was some miscommunication, and I know I thought that they had shrunk the parking spaces to the minimum allowed and still needed the 5 feet, but they don't. So we would ask for that amendment to condition 1. If someone would be interested in doing that later, just wanted to throw that out. Additionally, there have always been parking setbacks in the code. They were in a little bit of a different area in the landscape section before this last update, so we moved them to a table so they could be easier to find. But that has always been a part of the discussion of the design of these sites. This particular owner owns numerous sites and was trying to get some in under previous code and just didn't get it done in time. So as with everyone that you file, when you file, and then you have to meet those rules. So just wanted to clarify those 2 points. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Kinsey.
So I'll pose a question to the petitioner and the staff about this. And given that discussion about the parking and the maximum 5-foot side parking setback, is there another way to configure this so that it would not lose that setback? I understand that. I think it was Matt or Kendall, I can't remember now, sorry, described the way the parking could be, I'll use my very unsophisticated language, squished a little bit and make it really tight. That's one approach to do it. Is there another approach, like cut one of the parking spaces? And is that an option? Would that fix the setback violation right now?
Yeah, this is Kendall with Smith Design Group. It's really a depth issue. You know, the minimum, as Jackie said, is 20 feet and then 16 feet. And we can almost get there with the 20 and 16, so that'd be 36 feet. But I think we're actually still short inches, maybe 6 inches or so between our parking setbacks.
Okay, I don't know if staff can weigh in. Is there an alternative here that's reasonable?
So without talking too much about the variance, which we'll get to with those members on this board that are on the Board of Zoning Appeals, you know, the lot is only so wide. So when Kendall's saying, you know, if you have your front building wall setback and then you start your aisle immediately there, you have to go 20 feet, an additional 16. And now is there 8 feet left there before the rear wall? I don't think so. I think it's 7 and something. So they can get closer than what you're seeing here, which is why I'm suggesting adding the max in case the Board of Zoning Appeals finds that appealing. But I don't think that having parking as a drive aisle in with parking on one side, which is probably the only way they can get any, you know, amount of parking on this site, will work with the width of this lot.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, now I think I understand it's the depth issue that's the problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Seabour.
I guess just one quick question, and I don't know, Keegan, if you could pull up one of the renderings, but I think it captured it. But I just want to ask the petitioner about the driveway and the retaining wall that we see here. And I think I like what I see, but I just want to make sure I'm starting to ask this more of developments, but when there's a parking garage and walls, I want to make sure that people leaving that parking garage are able to see pedestrians or sidewalk users. And it looks like that retaining wall is pretty good, well set back from the sidewalk, but can you just walk us through to make sure that visibility for vehicles will be able to stop for people on the sidewalk before crossing it?
Yeah, this is Kendall again. I believe the retaining wall is set back approximately 6 feet from the edge of the sidewalk. So there is some space for visibility before you reach the sidewalk. We can look at that more if we need to pull the wall back a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate just looking at it, and you're already off to a better start than some other projects. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Kinsey.
Just one more clarification about the parking. I'm sorry, not parking, yeah, sidewalks. This allows for better pedestrian access on Lincoln, correct? That will get students to and from campus and existing walkways. I think I heard staff say something about this improves the walkway to Evolve, or what was that connection with Evolve that was mentioned earlier?
Sure.
Can you describe that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I would think it would be easier if I go to another aerial image, but they're going to be extending the multi-use path that kind of starts at Evolve here. And currently there's no, or well, there is a sidewalk, I think, but it's right up against the road. So they're going to basically extend that the whole way from Evolve to the intersection.
Great. So that's a significant bonus to clear walkways for students.
I would say so, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? All right, seeing none, then we will move to public comment on SP 19-21. Just as before, if you'd like to make comment, you need to raise your virtual hand. You can do that by clicking on the reactions button and then clicking on the raise hand button. If you have any trouble finding that, feel free to just click the chat button and send a chat message to myself or to Jackie Scanlon. We'll do our best to recognize you in the order that you get that hand raised or that chat in. Any public comment on SP 1921? I don't see any. Jackie, anything I'm missing?
I don't see anything. I don't have any messages.
All right, last call for public comment on SP 1921. All right, we are back to the commission then for any final comment or a motion. As a reminder, the staff recommendation is that we adopt the proposed findings and approve SP 1921 with 3 conditions. And staff's also recommended that we slightly modify that first condition to say that variance is to allow for a maximum 5-foot side parking setback. Commissioner Seaborn.
Yeah, I guess just a quick comment. I really like this project, and I think some of the comments that others have already said, I really appreciate the path and the changes to the access to a very busy street. I think there's just a lot of really good community benefits to this project, and so I very much support it, and I hope that I just hope it goes forward well. So I guess with that, I'll just make a motion to approve SP-19-21 with the conditions listed in the staff report and with the minor amendment to the first conditions dimension to, I think, from 5 feet to 7 feet.
Second.
Brad, you're muted.
Aha, thank you. Just want to clarify, Commissioner Seaborn, that your motion is to adopt the proposed findings as well as approve the petition.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Can I just ask that, did that include Jackie's additional take?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Seaborn,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
and Whistler.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion is approved. Okay, next up on our agenda is DP 23-21, Privet Drive LLC. The property is 1211 through 1213 South High Street. This is primary plat approval. And I think, Jackie, you're going to present this one, correct?
Yep.
All
Thank you.
Take it away.
Great. So this is DP 2321. The property is located at 1211 and 1213 South High Street. As Mr. Whistler said, you can see it here located just north of Covenanter Drive on the east side of High Street. The property currently contains what we're calling 3.5 lots, which is very odd. We don't normally talk about half lots. However, when this was platted a long time ago, it was platted as 4 lots. And what happened down to Covenanter, excuse me. And what happened was that at some point this southern lot was split and a portion of that lot was appended to lots 8, 7, and 6, which were the northern lots. And so the legal description for the petition tonight is 8, 7, 6, and part of 5. And a house was built on the other part of 5. So we worked with the legal department to determine that we would only call this 3 lots currently from a buildable standpoint. And the petitioner would like to have 4 lots. So they are here tonight requesting a primary plat approval. The property is currently zoned residential medium lot R2, and the comprehensive plan designation is neighborhood residential. The existing development on the lot is a house and a garage structure that actually sits on 211 by itself. And then you can see here that there is quite a bit of floodplain on the portion of lot 5 here to the south, and then moving up onto 6, 7 as well. So the petitioner again is requesting to create 4 lots. So I will show you that briefly. This is High Street here, and this is roughly the floodplain that you saw in the other images. The petitioner would like to install a driveway here and have 2 lots fronting High Street with 2 lots in the back. The UDO does not allow the creation of single family duplex, triplex, or 4plex residential lots without frontage on a public street right of way, unless they are part of a cottage home development, which this is not. We took this petition, as we take all Plan Commission petitions, to our internal development review committee meeting, and concerns were immediately raised by representatives of the Department of Public Works about the lots in the back without frontage, because they would not serve those lots with our recycling and trash services, as well as from members, longtime members of the addressing committee. This restriction, or one similar to it, has been in the UDO for a long time. It has been a preference of our local EMS to try to discourage lots that may be called sometimes flag lots, or lots that are in the back, because they can be very difficult to find in an emergency situation. So frontage lots for new single family have been a requirement. So I'm just wanting to show you kind of the location here. Again, as I said, these front on High Street. Covenanter is here on the east side. This is a new large single family that was built, and on this what looks vacant lot here in this image. And then you may be familiar with some work that CBU has recently done here, just north of Covenanter, to improve the water that moves under High Street there. This petition, obviously that work is immediately adjacent, is located here and is immediately adjacent to the southern side of this petition. So I point this out to note that from a services standpoint, for example, if we added this type of subdivision that would not be eligible for city services, we would then be adding some sort of private hauling, trash and recycling to this area for just these 2 lots on this fairly thin 20 to 25 foot road that has, a drop off on both sides and is already pretty constrained. So that was a concern that was raised as well. So the petitioner is able to request the petition because this requirement that I have listed here is part of our subdivision control chapter. So state code allows that Plan Commission can waive those requirements if they so choose. So the petitioner is requesting approval of the primary plat with a waiver of the requirement for those lots to have frontage. So the proposed primary plat does not meet all the UDO standards because it doesn't meet the particular standard that I listed. The waiver requested creates safety and emergency management access issues for the lots in the back, and potentially some kind of unneeded congestion issues for the immediate neighbors on a pretty regular schedule because of needing their own trash service back there. We have raised all these issues to the petitioner over this time since filing and since Development Review Committee, which they can attend. And they decided to bring forward the petition as is. Staff thinks that an improved design meeting the UDO standards is possible, and we have been asking for that for some time. This frontage of these 3.5 lots is over 350 feet long. It's about 362, I believe. And the width requirement for a new lot in the R2 zoning district is only 60 feet. So we do acknowledge, of course, that there is some floodplain on the south end, and that could create an issue if you just split this 364 into fourths. But you don't have to do that because the lot width requirement is fairly thin. So you could have 4 buildable frontage lots easily with this 362 feet. And we do appreciate the idea of having a shared drive. We think that could still be possible. Some sort of shared drive with an access along the back of the homes could work. We just haven't seen any ideas other than this one that doesn't meet code that we feel is inappropriate for the area. So Planning and Transportation Department recommends that Plan Commission adopt the proposed findings that were in the report, including that the petition does not meet all UDO requirements and to deny the petition. This is a 2-hearing petition. Normally, they did request a waiver of second hearing. We obviously are recommending denial of this design. They don't seem open to changing it, so no need to move on to a second hearing with a denial recommendation. But of course, you all could continue it to the next hearing as well. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Jackie. Is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to add anything to the presentation?
I want to say, I'm guessing this might be Daniel Butler. Is that you, Daniel?
Yep, this is Daniel with Bynum Family Associates. Good evening, everyone. With me tonight is Evan Martin, who's the representative for the petitioner owner. And this was an interesting piece of property that has a lot of potential. We did some research on what kind of older deeds were in this area, and it turned out that there wasn't half of one of the parcels that was sold years ago. And so there was a desire on our part to create a 4th lot, and there's plenty of land in this area to do so. The layout that you see before you, we believe, is the safest layout and also lines up the driveway with the adjacent property owner across High Street. And having one drive, we recommend having the totes for trash services or different services, maybe mailboxes all out at High Street, so that it wouldn't have, those services coming in and out of the complex or the neighborhood, I should say. And having one drive, we believe, is best rather than having multiple drives coming off of High Street, so that people don't have to back onto High Street, creating more of a traffic issue there with a busy street. So having a private drive that connects 4 drives to it would allow those who are coming into the main drive to pull in and then pull into their driveway, and then they can back out onto the private street, and then they can go out onto High Street safely and having sight distance to do so without backing out. So that's why we did what we did. And I don't know if Evan wants to add anything at this time, but we can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Was there anything else from the petitioner? Evan, did you want to add anything?
I think Daniel covered most of it. One other thing we would like to preserve at all possible is there is significant mature trees that line the property, and doing separate driveways would eliminate those trees. I'm not sure how old they are and exactly what kind of trees they are, but I would hate to lose that kind of landscaping along the High Street corridor as well.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner Seaborn.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the petitioner's comments about there certainly being some benefits to having a single consolidated access point that makes the sidewalk along High Street. Certainly, there's a lot of benefits to that, but I think we also heard some concerns about potential things like sanitation pickup and emergency response. And I think those are also really important. I'm just curious if you guys, as the petitioner team, have tried to follow up with the departments that have expressed those concerns since they were first voiced, just to see if a workable solution could be explored on them.
This is Daniel again with Bynum Fanning Associates. We haven't had any direct contacts. If you're talking about fire or any of those types of emergency services, but our thinking again with trash pickup or mail pickup is to still have those services along the road if it feels like a potential issue to have that pickup go into that private drive. Evan, I don't know if you've had any other contact at this time.
I mean, I've had some very loose contact with the fire department, and they didn't seem opposed to it at the time when we were having the discussion.
So I guess it sounds like really no.
Oh, you muted, Andrew.
Sorry about that. So I guess I'm just gonna be blunt. It's hard for me to move forward with the request without hearing more specifically what options may have been considered or reasons why they are not acceptable. Like for sanitation, if there are reasons that I'd like to understand things more in order to feel comfortable voting for this. So that's what I got right now. Sorry.
All right. Any additional questions? Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, I actually wondered along the same lines as Andrew, if what the petitioner is proposing to have the totes on High Street along with common mailboxes is allowed, is that just speculation? Will sanitation even be able to pick up totes that are, multiple totes at that space?
Sure, that's a good question. I don't know. I know one concern that we heard at DRC, at Development Review Committee, from Public Works was, they said, imagine a driveway on High Street, and instead of 2 totes down there every week, there are 8, because they're all 4 using the same space, coming down, dropping them, lining them up, as opposed to when you're walking down First Street and it's every, 30 or 40 feet. That's not ideal. It's not ideal for them to access them. And then I think when it was brought up, it was in the discussion of we won't serve the rear lots. Like we're not looking to, we don't do that. But even if they don't serve them, someone else will have to. And so then that will become an issue. But I don't know if technically, I don't know that there's technically a rule about whether or not they could all be there at the end. It's interesting because actually maybe Mike Stewart could have answered that question about the addresses, but I'm not sure if what the answer is about the, mailboxes either. Sorry. Oh, Daniel might know. Hold on just a second. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, we took those DRC comments into, into our kind of thinking on what is the best option for this piece of property and bring it before you. And maybe there is, to us, it felt like the benefits of having the one drive and the safety of that outweighed some of these that might be able to be worked through. And so that's why we still brought this before you as is. And I don't disagree. There's a couple of items here that you, Andrew, has brought up that feel like we still need a couple of answers on, but it felt still like the benefits of having it line like that and figuring out the services part would outweigh having the alternative. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you. If I can add to that as well, I don't want us to get confused. The department is not saying that a shared driveway is bad. That's great. We agree that 4 driveways on this portion of High Street is not as good as 1 driveway on this portion of High Street. It's having the lots in the back that literally have no frontage. You know, when a large fire truck is coming to your house, they're not pulling in your driveway to find you. They're stopping on the road and there's your house, you know, most typically. Something that they can access from the public way. And that is, in our experience and the experience of our address coordinators, why EMS often pushes back about having units and things in the back, especially their own lots with their own separate addresses. So yes, what we had asked the petitioner previously and haven't seen is for some sort of design where each of the technical lots would have frontage that then they could potentially share 1 or 2 driveways, that could be explored, and we haven't seen that done yet.
Jackie,
additionally, sorry, one more thing I was going to add. The way that the homes are oriented, and he's calling it a private street, but it's not, it's just a driveway, you know, connecting those 4 lots. So then all of those homes are facing this driveway and not facing out. You know, with the kind of pedestrian realm that we're used to, where when we're walking along the street, you know, the home is there and you're kind of like engaging with it. That is something that would be most likely that those homes would kind of all be turned in, and so a lacking of kind of that interface that the UDO encourages. Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I just was going to ask you to clarify what you were suggesting there. So you would suggest 4 long, skinny lots that would each be built facing High Street, but only a single curb cut.
But asking, is there some way that that Mr. Butler could design some sort of like having that driveway in a similar location or on the north end of the lots, and then having it, you know, function similarly to an alley along the back of the lots, even though it wouldn't technically be an alley? Something along those lines. Would that be possible? It would still be a shared drive, which they have now. You know, it would still be easement on some of the lots to get to the other lots, which they're showing now. It would just be oriented slightly differently. And then the lots would meet code because they would have frontage along High Street, and the houses would interface with High Street as opposed to being kind of turned away. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does, but it's I mean, it's more of a comment than a question. I'm not quite seeing how that changes anything with regard to like the recycling, for example. I mean, if you're still going to have 8 bins lined up across High Street.
Well, if you're going to have, sure, 8 bins split between 360 feet of frontage, or 8 bins all in a little ball down there, one shared drive. Because if your house has frontage on High Street, like
Sure.
my house, I don't go to the alley and take my bins down. I just take them down the front sidewalk and pop them in front of my house. You know, I think that's what the Department of Public Works person was kind of getting at, is that if they each actually have their own frontage, they can each use their own frontage for their, you know, public engagement things that they need done, where the 2 in the back don't. So then they kind of get grouped. And, you know, we've seen these types of requests, not this specifically, but we have a lot of long, deep lots in Bloomington. We get a lot of people asking, you know, oh, we'd just like to cut the back off and share a driveway. And EMS has been a opponent of that for a long time. And that's why it's been in code written this way for some time.
Thanks.
We're just hesitant to set a precedent that it's okay, because we have consistently said that it is.
I see Evan and Daniel both have their hands raised. Did you want to respond to that question as well?
This is Daniel real quick. I just want to respond to one thing. Jackie was saying that the front lawn lots along High Street still have the potential to be facing out towards High Street to still have that look. But yes, the two in the back would face each other, face that private drive. My idea with this, and I know there's still stuff to be vetted, would be have an easement along this private drive for the users to all use that and bring their trash or their recycling down to a row or whatever spacing is recommended, and then have that type of easement at the front of the lot where they can put those types of things along with mailboxes and that stuff. Even though it may be on one of the lots, you'd have an easement to do that type of stuff, but just another idea to get, you know, this type of layout to that type of place. But that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrell.
I have a question about the floodway. So in one of the site plans, it shows the floodway. Is that just an intermittent floodway? I mean, is that when we have rain, or, I mean, you know, that will make building in that lot significantly difficult. I guess the question is for anyone that can answer that.
Hi,
I mean,
Commissioner.
yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going, this is Daniel again. I'm the civil engineer on this project. So that flood line does represent the FEMA floodway line on the current flood maps. There has not been, when we talk to different neighbors and ideas in this area about where that floodwaters have actually reached, there's no indication that they have reached that high, but nonetheless, that's still what we need to obey. And that we understand that there's also a riparian buffer through the code of City of Bloomington that we would need to be a certain 25 feet away from the high water mark in there, but that does not reach the current floodway line that is on our plan. So yes, we are aware that there would be, you just wouldn't be able to build back in that line, but that's what that represents.
That would, I mean, and that's what I wanted to just make sure. If it's a floodway designed by FEMA, it can't be touched, and it will also cause some issues when getting construction loan or selling.
Sorry, did someone want to respond to that?
Sorry.
Sorry.
This is Daniel again with Biden. I mute myself when I'm done, and I can't unmute myself if I want to respond.
Stay unmuted, Daniel.
Yeah, just stay unmuted. That's
if you want me to, Jackie. I don't know if that's a good thing though. No, to respond to that, we are aware of the implications of what the FEMA flood line means. And yes, that's why we want to draw it clearly on there for everybody to see. And we took that into account with making that fourth lot. There would still be room enough to build and not grade into that area.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Oh, I see Evan's hand raised again. Evan, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, one thing I might want to add is the home that is in the second half of lot number 5 is completely in the floodway and is currently available for sale. So I think that's just kind of one of those pertinent things right around that same area. It's sitting 100% in the floodway and is listed for sale at this current time. So we have looked at the floodway, and with respect to the line, we think there is buildable area there. And also in regard to services, the current home sits on what is one of the proposed backlots, and there is current mail service reaching up to the house before we pulled the mailbox out. So we were getting services up to the lot in the back.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? I had one more question, Jackie. When you early in the presentation, you mentioned that partially this is not allowed because it's not a cottage home development. Can you maybe just describe what's different between this and what would be considered a cottage home development?
Sure. So you may recall we added cottage home development to the code a number of years ago. Now maybe 3 or 4. It all runs together. Hold on one second. So in the current code, which you see here, the cottage home development is exempted because the cottage home development is a different type of, let me see, all new single family duplex, triplex, and fourplex shall have frontage on a public street right of way or shall be part of cottage home development with frontage on public street right of way. So in a cottage home development, you don't have to do the subdivision. So you may recall that it's supposed to be similar to like, what's another word for it? Like court development, where it's a bunch of houses on one large lot, basically, where you don't actually have to do the subdivision, and then you have to meet a number of regulations. And I think that the point of excluding that here is that we are trying to encourage those and finding ways to make those easier to do. And so if there were larger lots that didn't meet that requirement, it would be kind of like having a small development in the back of a property and without having to do subdivision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess that my question though is what would have to change in this to make it a cottage home development? Is it shared
question.
Parking?
Yes, shared parking, and yes, shared parking. There are design requirements. Shared parking. They couldn't all. It would be one lot. They couldn't sell them off to separate individuals, which I know is one of the goals. So it's more of like a cooperative type situation.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners?
If I can point one thing out also, unless there are questions, sorry, I couldn't see everybody. One of the reasons as well to exclude this type of design is that it, although unintentionally, probably kind of subverts some of our subdivision requirements, because just as Daniel's calling it, a private road, it's not a private road, it's just a driveway. But I mean, it is used in the way that a road should be used, which is to access these properties. But we don't get sidewalks and we don't get street trees. We don't necessarily get opportunity for connection or utility connection like we would in a typical, like a real subdivision with our frontage and roadway requirements. So I think that's one reason that has been used in the past as well to discourage these type of behind the front lot subdivisions.
All right. Any other questions before we go to public comment? All right. We will now move to public comment on DP 23-21. If you'd like to make comment, click on the reactions button and click on the raise hand button, or send a chat message to myself or to Jackie Scanlon. We'll do our best to recognize you in the order that you raise your hand.
Mr. Garabrandt, you can go ahead. You are unmuted, but we can't hear you. Oh, hold on. Try it again. Go ahead and try to unmute again. Okay, you are unmuted.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes, great. Thank you.
If Zoom picks the right microphone.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Eric Garabrandt, and I'm the property owner just north of these lots. I am happy to see that the developer, Mr. Martin, does plan to live on this property, and his desire to preserve the existing landscaping and mature trees. I think my primary concern really echoes those of the Environmental Commission regarding drainage. Runoff from many of the surrounding lots drains through the back of my property, and then through these lots to the watershed on the south end. And my concern is that changes to any grading or additional structures on this property may impact that and cause backup and pooling in the back of my property, which is sort of the lowest part before it runs off through these lots, and could cause flooding. In its current state, my property already can accumulate a significant amount of water that takes some time to drain through these lots and drain away. So I would like to see some sort of drainage plan for this site as well before it gets further approval. I think that's really my concern. That's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Conkle, you can go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I will be very brief. I wanted to comment first that I have had a chat both with Daniel Butler and with Evan Martin. Both of them were very helpful and accommodating. I am a neighbor immediately to the east of the property. And given the 4-lot arrangement that is proposed, we had some potential concerns or have some potential concerns about sort of the privacy issues in terms of how close the houses on the eastern part might be to the property line. There is a utility easement between the two properties. There currently is a metal fence that my wife and I happen to like. But there, in any case, I guess the point is that with the, if there is to be a second hearing, we might want to chat further or meet further, perhaps even in person with the petitioner and or with Mr. Butler to try to pin down some of these things. So I guess I would be a little bit concerned if the commission is prepared to go ahead and approve it as is. I would prefer that there might be a second hearing, which I think what the Environmental Commission was recommending in any case. So, but I do want to really thank both Mr. Martin and Mr. Butler for their very helpful engagement, and I think they do want to be good neighbors and accommodate those of us who are already in the neighborhood. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on DP 2321?
I don't see anything and I don't have any messages.
Last call for public comment on DP 2321. All right, we are back to the commission for any additional questions, comments, or a motion. Commissioner Kinsey.
A question regarding the question that the commenter Eric Garabrand raised about flooding. Is there additional information about flooding that can relieve his concern or comment? I don't know if that's been, I understand we talked about flooding on the other side, but he's saying his property is north.
Are you wanting to ask him that?
Not necessarily him. I don't know if there's anybody, Jackie, if you have any knowledge of this.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I will say we said in the report as well that one of the requirements for approval is that the petitioner has shown a drainage proposal addressing potential exposure to flood hazards. I would have to ask, I don't know if that means only the area in the subdivision. I would guess that it does. And they didn't submit that. But I don't know that would help the neighbor necessarily.
Okay.
Like this is similar. I don't know if you all will recall when we did a small subdivision on the east side off 2nd Street and Rose, where there was only so much we could require because the subdivision met code requirements, but the neighbors were all very concerned about potential flooding. And so we did tried to do some mitigation with design requirements, but that was about all we could do.
Thank you.
Commissioner St. John.
Thank you. Jackie, can you say a little bit more? You talked earlier, and I think I missed it, about the second hearing. And then this is the petitioner waived a second hearing, or
Sure.
refresh my memory there.
Yeah, so primary plat approval requires 2 hearings. The petitioner requested that this be heard in one. Because we did not have any really response from them for any of the concerns raised by either us or anyone at the Development Review Committee, we just decided to go forward with the denial recommendation, not expecting much change to happen as a result of this hearing. Literally nothing has changed since the first time we saw the drawing, except for some of the setbacks were put on incorrectly, and they corrected that. So yes, you could, and I mean, you can always continue to a next hearing anyway. But yes, primary plats are typically 2 hearing petitions. They requested waiver of second hearing. And because we're recommending denial, we just did it at the first hearing.
Right, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. So we could support the denial, we could approve it, or we could ask for a second hearing.
Correct. Approve with conditions, deny, or continue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Kate.
I would be in favor of continuing this if the petitioner is prepared to talk further with the department and see whether there's something that can be worked out here. It sounds like there may be some scope to try to find something workable that will hopefully address some of the issues the Environmental Commission raised and were raised by the neighbors, and still, ultimately come up with something that works for the petitioner as well. So it sounds like they're just, to comment back on Commissioner Seabor's comments earlier, that some more work would need to be done here. And if the commissioner is prepared, if the petitioner is prepared to do that, then it seems to make sense to me to forward this to a second hearing and allow that work to happen in between.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Sandberg was next.
Yes, thanks. I would tend to want to deny the petition at this point, unless, they can significantly change this to where it does not cause the concerns that were raised by Public Works and the Address Committee, by that Development Review Committee. I would not want this to set any kind of precedent that we would have to, that would cause problems with future developments like this. So, but happy to hear what the rest of the commission has to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Cockrum.
First off, I just want to say I appreciate Mr. Butler and Mr. Martin bringing this in front of us, even though they knew they had a recommendation for denial from the staff. So I love that they felt confident enough in the project to want to have an open discussion. As I do support density, and especially in areas that have bus stops and city services, I enjoy your effort on this, but I do have issue with the utility services, all the things that were mentioned, the fire services, the flooding issues. There's parts of this project that would lean me towards denial this evening. However, as Commissioner Kate mentioned, if these items could be addressed, researched, and maybe come with some other recommendations, I might think differently. The other thing that I'm concerned with is not the first generation of people that might move into these homes. It's the second and the third, because the thought of having a subcontractor handling trash service for only 2 homes in an area that doesn't have any other subcontractors in there, I struggle with that. And so as these houses will turn and have new homeowners that come in there throughout the years, it's, I see issues even more down the road. So this evening, I'd probably lean towards denial. However, if we came back a second evening and heard some solutions, or just some alternatives to the issues that are brought up with utilities and emergency services and the flooding issues, I might think differently.
Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, I'll just pile on the same comments. I think the speculation around where the totes could be placed and whether there could be mailboxes in common is a little too speculative for me. So I would want to know that the petitioner and the staff have worked through those issues specifically and have come to some decision and some real solutions, not speculation about those things. They're too important to leave to speculation. And I also have serious, real concerns about EMS and emergency services and fire access. So not just a conversation with the fire department that seems rather casual. There really needs to be some evidence that this is a viable plan. I don't want to cut off, creative solutions at all, but those are real serious issues for me. And I also really want to respect the fact that we've just gone through extensive process of UDO adoption and revision, and the idea of having frontage on streets seems like a very important thing, and I really don't want to start giving that up at this stage. So unfortunately, at this point, it would be denial unless the petitioner would prefer to continue.
Any other comments? Commissioner St. John.
So this is another process question. So given what I'm hearing and maybe what I'm thinking too, is there a way to assess with the petitioner if they would be in favor of coming? I mean, if the choice, I don't know how this works. So if the choice is that we vote, and I'm not trying to project anyone's vote, but let's say we were to vote denial unless they're willing to come back for a second hearing and bring change. I mean, how does that work? Because they already were asked to bring changes and didn't. It sounds like they are showing some degree of working with neighbors. And so it doesn't sound like they're unwilling to address some things. So it feels like we want to give them a chance, but yet they're not like speaking during this time during the meeting. So it's a little hard to know how to proceed.
I would imagine that any petitioner would prefer continuation over denial,
Yeah.
but I would be happy to recognize the petitioner if they would like to weigh in on that before we move on.
Yeah, we'd be happy to have those conversations with utilities and with the trash services. That's not a problem.
Just say as staff, this drawing is not ever going to get a positive recommendation from us. We have been, administering a subdivision control ordinance and UDO for decades. These types of lots are not ideal for a number of reasons. I am happy to have you guys continue it and discuss it more if they're willing to make actual changes. I mean, the discussions we've had internally at the Development Review Committee meeting and separately with Public Works staff, they're not going to service those back lots. They aren't comfortable with this type of arrangement. That's, the point of the Development Review Committee is for us to say that to the petitioner then so that they can make changes to meet code when the things that they're doing that don't meet code are also dissatisfying, the needs of the city. So I guess, obviously it's totally up to you guys in the end, but I don't want to have some sort of portrayal that we're going to come to some MOU about where totes are going to go. That's not something we can mandate over time. And that's why we have regulations that we have to try to, build in those types of normalcies and things like that, that we're not going to be looking to come to some sort of agreement. If they can make the design meet code, then we'll recommend approval. This design does not meet code. And also, it has been shown to be satisfactory by those departments who would have to be servicing these lots. So we have to try to be their voice here at these meetings and say, this isn't going to work for the work that we have to do as the city. Sorry, Eric, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, the idea of trash pickup and emergency services is certainly an important aspect. Really, the bigger problem is just a fundamental planning principle of we want all new single-family lots to front on a public street. As Jackie mentioned, that's how we get public improvements, sidewalk, street trees. We get road connections through neighborhoods. Private drives aren't required to follow the transportation plan, which is something that we just looked at with the Overlook project and a problem that we encountered with that. So it's really a fundamental issue that we have with this project of lots being created that don't front on a public street. And this situation is not unique. We have this conversation all the time with folks in Bloomington that own lots all over town that would like to chunk off a back portion of their property or something like that. And our code just doesn't allow for it for a lot of reasons. Also, as Jackie mentioned, we don't get fronts of the buildings facing the street. You don't get the interaction along the street. So it's really just a fundamental problem that we have with this petition, that unless they completely redesign it, to have all the lots faced on the street, which is very possible. It's very likely that they can do that and meet code. I think that's our fundamental concerns with this project, the petition as a whole.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I think that was all in response to my question. I appreciate all of you weighing in, including, I believe it was Mr. Martin. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Burrell.
I agree with several of the commissioners that the design as presented and what is presented in front of us today merits denial. It's not following the UDO recently done, and it's not following what makes it easier for the city to operate. And of course, if they bring the design, a different design in front of us that follows the UDO and follows code, and also taking consideration the drainage problems that might be caused by the new buildings, that would be a different story. I would gladly look at that, but as what it's presented to us tonight, this is a denial. Thank you.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we deny the petition as recommended by our planning staff. And if I have not worded that correctly, please correct me.
I think that motion is clear.
Second.
Okay, the motion is for denial, and there is a second. Any final comment before we call the roll? Commissioner Kate.
The only thing I'll say, since I could have kicked off this round of what about a second hearing, is what we just heard, I think, from the petitioner did not signal to me enough of what is looked for, which is a new sort of more robust effort to meet code. And so to me too, it seems like the way to go would be to deny this, and then they can come forward with a new plan.
Any additional comment? Well, I'll just say I think I would maybe prefer a continuance. I think it seems to me like the challenges here are not all that insurmountable. I know that there are some legitimate concerns. I'm not convinced that trash pickup is all that difficult of a challenge to solve. Seems that there's plenty of room for totes along the yard there, but along the frontage, I certainly would like to hear more about the fire and EMS to confirm that that there are not real concerns there. And I am a little bit concerned just looking at, if you look at the street frontage there, if you had lots that had to be fronting on High Street, you absolutely would have to clear out those very mature trees that are currently along High Street there, which is a concern to be taken into account. So I guess if this motion fails, then we can entertain another motion for continuance, but I think it's appropriate to go ahead and call the roll at this point.
Burrell,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
and Whistler.
No. All right, the motion carries. The petition is denied. We are on now to our final petition of the evening. This is SP 26-21. We've got Eric Grulich to present. Take it away, Eric.
Thank you, Brad. This is a request from Aspen Topco, 2 acquisitions for property at 703 West Gorley Pike. The petitioners are requesting approval to allow for the construction of a 241 unit student housing and multifamily dwelling unit development in the mixed use student housing district. With this petition, the petitioners are also requesting to utilize the sustainable development incentives for this site. This site was recently rezoned to the mixed use student housing district. This site might look familiar to you because you heard this earlier this year for a site plan approval for a very similar, almost exact site plan approval. That previous petition was filed under the old zoning code. The RH zoning was in place at that time. Since then, this site has been rezoned as part of the overall amendments to the city zoning code. And this was rezoned to the mixed use student housing district. So the petitioners are coming forward with a new site plan for this site. This would, similar to the old petition, involve completely removing all of the apartment buildings that are on the site now in order to allow for it to be redeveloped with a new development. On the screen now is the slide or the site plan that was approved with the previous petition. Real briefly, that petition involved the construction of 3 buildings, 1 new public road through the site that also stubbed to the west property lines. That did show a public road moving through the site with sidewalks, street trees on both sides, on-street parking, and then some surface parking lots behind the proposed buildings. The new site plan that is coming under the MS zoning district is very similar. It proposes 4 buildings, mostly the same site arrangements, same building design, 3 main buildings. This new petition has a new building on the south side of the property, but overall you have 3 main buildings. Buildings 1 and 3 have 4 and 5 bedroom units in them and are designated as student housing. Building 2 in the center of the site consists of mostly studios, 1s and 2 bedrooms with some 3 bedrooms. And then the building on the south side of the site has 4 5-bedroom units in that. So some of the changes, or the main change from this petition versus the previous petition, is that there are no new public roads proposed within the project site. They're just proposing 1 driveway moving through the site with perpendicular parking off of that. They are proposing to have a 8-foot multi-use path running along the west side of that drive that will circle out and connect to Kinzer Pike on the east side of the site, as well as connect to Gorley on the north side of the site. There would be a multi-use path installed along Gorley and along Kinzer, as well as street trees. The petitioners are also proposing to install some new on-street parking spaces on Gorley. That is not being approved with this petition. That would have to be codified and approved through the Board of Public Works, which is a separate petition. But that would allow for the creation of a handful of spaces. I think 8 spaces or so would be installed along the Gorley Pike. So in total, this petition would involve the construction of 241 units, 671 bedrooms, with 495 parking spaces being provided for all of the residents on this site. Again, similar to the last petition, there would be a detention pond constructed on the south side of the development adjacent to the riparian buffer. There's a creek that runs along the south side of the site that is subject to the riparian buffer standards and does not allow any development within there. Some of the stormwater detention would be allowed within the zone 3 of that area. There would also be bicycle parking located throughout the complex. The petitioners are proposing a mix of bicycle parking within the buildings, as well as along the front of all of the buildings. They are required to have at least 25% of the bicycle parking provided within the building or in long-term storage, which they have shown. As I mentioned, they are proposing to utilize the sustainable development incentives. Utilizing that incentive allows them to not be held to the 20,000 square foot footprint that is restrictive for the mixed use student housing district for student housing. So that allows them to have buildings 1 and 3 and 4 not be held to that 20,000 square foot limitation. So they are proposing landscaping, of course, throughout the site according to the UDO standards. So they have incorporated landscaping that falls within what is allowed by the UDO, both for species and quantity. We will do a final review of that with the grading permit, but so far what they have submitted appears to be able to meet the UDO standards. So the architecture for the buildings, again, is almost identical to what was shown with the previous petition. They are incorporating a mix of building elements and materials, both horizontally and kind of vertically throughout the project. They are meeting the anti-monotony standards by incorporating buildings that have a mix of stories and footprints. Buildings 1 and 3 would be a 4-story building. Building 2 would be a 5-story building, and then building 4 at the south end of the site would be a 2-story building. So the anti-monotony standards require a difference in building height, roof line, and footprint. So they have met those requirements through the diversification of the building types and size and height. So one of the conditions that we have outlined in the report is basically dealing with the design of the buildings, not necessarily along the front, which is the east elevation that you see in this specific rendering for buildings 1 and 3, but to require that some of those elements, the stone elements that you see, be replicated along some of the backsides of the building. They've done a really good job along the east elevation for the side facing the internal drive, but we would like to see some more of those building elements replicated around the building as a whole. This would be in line with the 360-degree architecture requirement that the UDO has. They do meet the modulation requirements. So we're just looking for a little bit more synergy along all 4 of the building sides to accomplish that 360-degree architecture. So these are the renderings for the townhomes. As we mentioned in the staff report and a condition of approval, these were initially shown as being 6-bedroom units. Our definition of family restricts occupancy to no more than 5 unrelated adults per unit. So we have a condition that would require these to be modified to 5-bedroom units rather than 6-bedroom units, so that we are not dealing with any kind of enforcement issues with over occupancy. So with that, this does meet all of the requirements of the UDO. As I mentioned, they are requesting to utilize the sustainable development incentives and are proposing to meet that by having these buildings be certified through the National Green Building Council to the silver level certification. That is one of the options listed within the UDO for the sustainable development incentives. So that is something that would be required. They would need to submit that certification to us prior to recommendations for the final occupancy. So as I mentioned, we are recommending approval of this request with the 12 conditions that are listed in staff's report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any questions from commissioners? Actually, sorry, before we do that, is there a representative of the petitioner who would like to speak?
Hi, everybody. Kendall Kanoki, Smith Design Group again. And I'm here with David Helfrich from Aspen Heights Partners and Andrea Garland from Kitchen & Associates as the architect. And we do have a little presentation we're going to give you guys. So we will start with David, and then we will go Andrea, and then I will close it out. So go ahead, David.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. We're going to show the presentation. Excellent. Thank you, Kendall. I'm happy to, I believe everyone has seen this presentation before, a little bit about Aspen Heights. I'm happy to do a very high-level overview. I know it's late, and this is the last agenda item, but just briefly, Aspen Heights is a developer builder of student housing. We've been in business since 2016. Obviously, we are specialized in student housing in college towns. We are one of the top 10 developers in the country of student housing, 1.6 billion since inception. We focus on developing very high quality product that's institutional grade, very strong track record in all the municipalities and markets we work with across the country. The next slide outlines a little bit about kind of how we're set up. We're a vertically integrated company, so we are very involved in all factors of the community in the project. We do the original development, which we're talking about today. We're involved in the construction process. We do manage our own property, so we do not do that third party. It's all done in-house. We are long-term holders and obviously owners in the community. So that's a little bit about our platform and kind of how we operate. The next slide outlines a little bit more about kind of our footprint, what we've done since inception. As I mentioned, about 16,000 beds, one of the largest developers in the country. We have 40 distinct projects and $2 billion pipeline currently today in the marketplace. I think that's my last slide. I think I'll turn over a little bit to the architect team to talk about the aesthetics and the specifics of the plan, unless there's any more questions for me. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Garland. I'm a registered architect at Kitchen & Associates. We're an architecture, engineering, and interior design firm out of Collingswood, New Jersey. We focus primarily on multifamily developments like this proposed project for the past 50 years in many states across the country. Overall, as it was noted, we have 2-story, 4-story, and 5-story buildings on the site. They're all wood frame construction. The 4-story and 5-story buildings will be elevated. All have the same aesthetic, roof design, and exterior material choice. The architecture consists of a blend of contemporary architectural features with some traditional materials. The buildings are all broken down into vertical bays utilizing the undulations in the building facades, as well as the material variation to ensure that the large, long buildings do not seem monotonous from the street. The design also utilizes a banding detail vertically and horizontally to further break down the building facades. The materials are primarily fiber cement lap siding in a wood look, as well as neutral tones, fiber cement vertical panels with batten trim, fiber cement panels with battens, and architectural stone veneer that are primarily currently on the front facades, but may be transitioned around all 4 sides of the building. The vertical fiber cement panels on the corners of the buildings will vary in color from building to building for wayfinding on the site and to differentiate one building from the next. The entry points are all marked with a covered area, whether it was added or subtracted from the building. All the entry areas are clearly defined with larger amounts of storefront glazing on buildings 1, 2, and 3. And the building 4 units all have their own individual doors at street level. All the mechanical equipment will be housed on the flat roof, so it's hidden from the public view. We have smaller amenity spaces in buildings 1 and 3, primarily consisting of study areas, individual or in groups. Building 2 is going to house the main amenities for the development. On the first floor, we have a clubhouse, leasing center, fitness areas. We have an outdoor pool and hot tub, as well as various seating and gathering spaces for the residents. Covered and enclosed bike storage will be located at each building as noted earlier. We also have covered outdoor kiosks for bike storage, as well as open bike parking areas along the fronts of the building. The building design meets the criteria of the UDO, and we want to just thank you for reviewing our project tonight.
Thanks, Andrea. This is Kendall with Smith Design Group again. So I just wanted to talk about really what's changed from the first time around. So obviously Eric, has summarized that pretty well. Big change is that there's no longer public roads here built to, the public street standards. So these have basically turned into drive aisles and parking areas. Obviously building 4 has been added here in the southeast corner of the site. Otherwise buildings are the same. In this, with this change, we are keeping the stream crossing exactly as it is. That helps avoid going through, environmental permitting and things like that. So just keeping that drive how it is, with the exception of we are narrowing it down and we are adding in a 10-foot wide path. So basically utilizing the existing crossing, but adding the 10-foot wide path. And I just wanted to show this because it kind of shows the public. These are going to be in pedestrian access easements. So this is a way that the public can get through the site on a 10-foot wide multi-use path. We also have 2 pedestrian connections that are stubbing on the west property line to kind of keep with that, intent of the pedestrian connectivity in the community. And, as the areas around this lot develop, this is a big lot. We thought it was good to kind of keep that. That was stressed the first time around, the pedestrian connectivity, and keep those options open. So I kind of wanted to highlight that. And then also the yellow line is an access easement for the Bloomington transit buses. Those will continue to run through the site as they do now. And we've, continued to incorporate their comments, such as restroom facilities for the drivers, the 2 stops that they've requested, that kind of thing. Parking on the old site plan, as Eric mentioned, was 405 spaces. Most of those were public, 262 of them. With this iteration, there are 489 spaces. I think Eric said 495. We've had to lose a few of them for one reason or another, but there are additional spaces, but they're now all private. So the city won't have to maintain those spaces. However, they, are no longer public street spaces. And then impervious surface coverage, we are at 59%. We are permitted a maximum of 70%. This is the site plan overlaid on the aerial. So I just kind of wanted to show that we have backed off of that riparian buffer. I know the first time around, there was a lot of concern about being very close to that woods and being able to build retaining walls right up against it. So we really kind of pulled everything back just to make sure that we are well off of that. So just kind of wanted to show the detention areas are basically going where the existing parking and roads are now. And yeah, I think that's it for me. We are here to answer questions. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We'll go back to the commission now. Any questions from commissioners, either for staff or for the petitioner? Commissioner Kinsey.
Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate seeing this again and seeing some of the improvements. I regret that some of the things are lost, but overall it looks good. I had a question about the, one is about a total housing gain that we're seeing from this redevelopment. I realize that the apartment complex there currently is aging. There are problems with flood and drainage and drainage issues that I remember. And I wonder if someone has done the count, or if it's somewhere in the packet and I missed it. What are we adding? So we're taking away this older structure with how many units and how many more are we getting? Eric, do you have a sense for that?
Yes, so there are 206 units, 393 bedrooms on the site now. And so there will be 241 units and 671 bedrooms. So we're getting about 270, 280 or so new bedrooms on the site.
Okay. good. All right, that's good. That's a good addition. The other question I had was just about the silver LEED certification, and I'm excited to see the application of the sustainable development. And if the petitioner might want to, brag a little bit on some of the attention that they're paying to silver LEED certification, and know any details, or what are you most excited about that? I think this is an important occasion to kind of celebrate this moving forward.
Yeah, Congressman Kenzie, I appreciate Congressman Kenzie. I think that we have pride ourselves in trying to take the initiative on this. And as you know, it's unique and it's challenging to meet. And I think we've done a good job of trying to meet that standard. I will turn it over to our architect and Andrea to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what we've done to accomplish that. But we are proud of that and excited to bring that to Bloomington.
Typically when meeting LEED Silver, not LEED Silver, National Green Building Standard Silver, they are different. We take into account a lot of mechanical, like HVAC, electrical, LED lighting's typically involved. We use low flow fixtures and take into account, all of the plumbing fixtures, making sure that they meet water sense. We take into account, higher SEER ratings for our mechanical equipment. And just a lot of green and sustainable features. I don't have them all listed out in front of me, I'm sorry. But we have gone through the LEED checklist, the National Green Building Standard checklist, and we do meet the silver standards.
Well, thank you for clarifying the National Green Building Standards versus the LEED standard too. That is.
They are different.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional questions from commissioners? Commissioner Seaborg.
Thanks. I think in the petitioner's letter, there was just a reference about some utility improvements that might be necessary with this project. And I was just wondering if they could expand on what that work will entail.
Yeah, I can expand on that. This is Kendall with Smith Design Group again. We are performing some downstream sanitary sewer upgrades. This is unchanged from the previous iteration of this project. Basically, there's an existing 10-inch sanitary sewer that's got a lot of infiltration issues and has had some issues with sewer overflows. So we are upsizing that sewer pipe as requested by CBU as part of this project. And I think another difference between the previous iteration and this iteration is before we were doing public utilities in the roadway, and now we're doing private utilities on the site. So there's no additional publicly owned water or sewer that will be constructed as part of this project now.
Thanks. And maybe just for my own sake, I'm just curious to maybe understand a little bit more. I'm glad you highlighted some of the differences, but just more a question of curiosity on what led to the new application and some of these changes. Like, what was the calculation and how was that decision ultimately made?
Sure. In the RH zoning, if you are in the student housing / dormitory use, you have to be, you are limited, you have certain restrictions on the property. So you're limited, I think, to 4 stories. You're limited to a certain building floor plate, and you have to have separation requirements from other student housing uses. So your lot has to be 300 feet from another student housing lot. So in order to get units that were considered student housing on the site, we needed to do a subdivision where we could space out the 2 student housing buildings from each other with lot 2, which had kind of the big, what was classified as multifamily residential on it. So the subdivision was a way to meet the separation requirements, but once the site was rezoned mixed use student housing, it no longer had those same use restrictions on student housing because it was now a student housing zone. I'm sure planning staff can elaborate on that too.
And I guess just maybe reading between the lines, then the subdivision and all of the public improvements, I guess just that the costs of that were just found to be not necessary anymore. Is that?
Yeah, another big concern was most of the parking was public, and there's just concern, you know, with the property, you know, they have certain requirements for, you know, these kinds of projects, and just uncertainty as to whether or not the city would keep the parking there, whether it would be metered, you know, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. If you'd like to make public comment on SP 2621, just click the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, click on the raise hand button, and we'll do our best to recognize you in the order that your hand was raised. If you have trouble finding that, you can also just send a chat message to myself or to Eric. I think Eric is going to moderate our public comment here. I believe he's got the controls now. Not seeing any hands raised.
Yeah, there's nobody in the chat box yet.
Okay. Any public comment on SP 2621? Last call for public comment on SP 2621. One more time, just click the reactions button and click raise hand if you'd like to make comment. All right, seeing none. We are back to the commission for any additional discussion or a motion on SB 2621. Any additional questions or comments? Did I see your hand there, Commissioner St. John?
Yep. I'll motion that we accept the findings of SP-2621 and approve it with the 12 recommendations.
Yes, that's right.
Sorry, my screen is freezing here. So the motion is to adopt the proposed findings and to approve SP 2621 with the 12 conditions of approval as recommended in the packet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Was that Commissioner Kate?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any final comment before we call the roll? All right, let's call the roll on the motion to approve. Darla, are you calling the roll?
I'll go ahead. We might be experiencing some problems there, Darla. Burrell,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Seabour,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Herrera,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
and Whistler.
Yes.
Petition is approved 9-0.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for your patience this evening. I know it's been a long meeting, but this is the conclusion of our agenda, and we are adjourned.